Time is the enemy, the ally, and the holy grail of every race car driver. Who will be victorious? Only time will tell. Let's go.
While Christian Challoner's impressive feats have stolen the limelight in the majors, we must remember to look past the points leader this season. Former champion Matthew Thundhorst has kept the gap to Christian incredibly tight, and at this stage of the season appears to be a serious contender. There's a realistic shot for him to become only the second ever double champion of the league. First, though, all the drivers must face one of the most daunting challenges in racing, the ring. We'll see who steps up as we get ready to watch the Majors Nurburgring 2.4, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Adam Lindgren and DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. The Nürburgring needs no introduction for most road racing fans, but in case our viewers have yet to witness this incredible circuit, let's head to our track guide.
New Hampshire Motor Speedway, sometimes referred to by the name of the town that hosts the track, Loudon. It's also usually referred to as a 1 mile oval, but the actual track length is just a few hundredths more than a mile. The facility as we know it today opened.
Welcome to the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Most modern high-end series might use the GP circuit nowadays, but it will certainly never hold the respect and awe that the Northern Loop commands. Though it can be and is usually used in conjunction with the Grand Prix circuit for competitions in real life, here on iRacing, drivers can harken back to a time gone by and just run the 13-mile behemoth this place is known for. Nicknamed the Green Hell by three-time F1 world champion Sir Jackie Stewart, it is often regarded as the greatest test of a driver anywhere on the planet. Just looking at the stats will tell you why. More than 150 turns and close to 1,000 feet in elevation will pass you by in a single lap. Simply memorizing the course is half the battle for most drivers, let alone being fast. It goes without saying that this place is dangerous. Many fast corners lack runoff, there's blind apexes everywhere, and in a couple cases, even modern cars will get airborne. The list of famous turns is pretty lengthy, but some of the more notorious are places such as fluke plots, Miss Hit Miss, Bravery Corner, and of course, the ever-iconic Carousel. It's not just the places where you've got to move the wheel that get attention too. The Dottinger Hoa stretches for more than 1.5 miles in length. While you would think this circuit would mainly be limited to the track days most gearheads flock to for a chance to lap the ring, it still sees quite a bit of wheel-to-wheel combat. The 24 Hours of the Nürburgring, the VLN Series, and the World Touring Car Championship all still take the track to this day. Many race fans consider this the mecca of road racing, and any driver who is able to push the limits here often quickly garners their respect. Adam, I got to witness this place with the Lotus 79s this morning, but what about with GT cars around this track?
Absolutely, Joe. The Nurburgring combined 24-hour layout is possibly the most diverse, most difficult circuit in all of racing. With over 16 miles and 175 turns, the Green Hell, as it was affectionately called by Sir Jackie Stewart of F1 fame, is even more challenging when you bring these particular cars to the track, as you said, Joe. The Porsche GT3 Cup car features a minimal setup change option, and thus it can be quite a handful through weight transfers, which are plentiful around here at the Nordschleife. The GT4 machines tend to be a bit squirrely themselves on power application and over rough terrain, which is also in good abundance around here, while the Audi TCR tends to push through the corners if the brake balance isn't perfect, and being front-wheel drive, it can be a handful over the jumps here at the ring as well. Multi-class will be of little factor today considering the length of the circuit, but if you do run upon a slower class car, patience will be the name of the game. In fact, I'll give the driver some free advice, Joe. If you want success at the ring, complete the first lap and then go racing. I think the drivers will find their odds of success increase quite a bit if that is their focus.
Yeah, we've seen too many problems on that first lap. Let's take a look at the championships, though, starting, of course, with the Drivers' Championship. At the pro level, Christian Challoner only 2 points ahead of Thunhorst and 3 ahead of Waring. Walker and Driscoll as well, keeping things tight behind them. Of course, this is starting to take into account some of the drop weeks, so that's why we're suddenly seeing everything so tight. But Adam, you have the Pro Teams Championship as well, I believe.
Absolutely. Forge Racing Pro 1 at the top of the standings, only 6 points above Evolve Sim Sports, so quite a tight battle there for those drivers. Then Kinetic America's Pro 1, 59 points behind, with Dog Bear Red 76 points back, and Kinetic America's Pro 2, 94 points back.
What about today's race details? DJ, what are the viewers in for?
Well, they are in for 2.4 hours of GT fun around this massive circuit. 3 different classes of cars that you're going to be able to take to the track to today. You're going to be able to go out in the Porsche 911 RSR 911s, those very, very fast cars up at the top. You're going to have in the middle class the GT4s, which are going to be populated by BMWs, Porsches, and McLarens. And then in that bottom class, you're going to have the TCRs. That is going to be a 2.4 hour race around the ring. We're anticipating about 17 laps for these drivers.
And this is our grid order for today. James Walker has put it on the pole for the Porsche Cup class, with Brian Bennett outside of him. Jeff Schmeier starts in third, followed by Josh Chin in fourth. And it's Justin Kirby on the inside of the next row with Daniel Johnson to his right. Chris Yatito starts seventh. Jason Wallet will start in eighth, with Eric Smith and Mark Stevenson starting at the back of that Porsche Cup field.
Christian Challoner is going to start off the GT4s next to Matthew Thunhorst. He had about a 6-second gap over Thunhorst, 5 seconds actually by the end of qualifying. Lyndon Swaby's going to start off in third, with Liam Quinn starting off in fourth position. Those two drivers fairly tight. Then Andrew Wood and Austin Espedy lining up fifth and sixth. Brian Barnes and Nick Kuhn are going to round out your top 8, with Bruce Perry and Wayne Hutchison your top 10. Lynn Kinchlow, Trent Brown, Joshua Collins, Travis Henderson, and Zachary Brown did not set times and are lining up at the back of the field down to 15th.
In that TCR category, it's going to be Andrew Waring, followed by Travis Warling to make up your front row. Behind then, you have Justin Morton and Kevin Hill. And then you have Vincent LaHerbier and Adam Halleck, with Samuel Harris, Brian McGreevy, and Ryan Still going back to the row 14 overall. Rob Powers will line up behind them, with Marcus Tracy also setting a time in the back there as well. And then David Hall is going to bring up the back of that TCR field.
As we wait for the cars to take off behind that Porsche pace car, we're going to have 2.5 hours of racing around the ring. Now, before we go racing, we need to remind you of our charity, of course. They have one in each round here in the majors. This time, it is the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. CCLA is a human rights organization committed to defending the rights, dignity, safety, and freedoms of all people in Canada. They believe that everyone should be treated equitably and that the legal system should work for the people, not against them. Find out how you can get involved at ccla.org. So, coming through Antonius Beach, and they're getting ready to be released here as they come off of the Nordschleife on to the Grand Prix course. Things will start, and then we'll hope that everybody manages to get through this first lap clean. Such a drastic change from last round, where they raced at a mile oval in New Hampshire in the modifieds. Now it is in GT cars at one of the longest tracks in the world. James Walker will have control as the pace car heads under the bridge and into the pits. They're now on to the Grand Prix course. He's waiting for the green flag. And he's on it. Green flag is out. It's a horrible start for Bennett. He's getting swamped on either side. He's going to be 3 wide coming into the Yokohama S. This might not be good unless they get this sorted out soon. All of them braking hard down into the corner, actually gaining a bit on Walker. And as they siphon in, a little bit of a spin from Schmeier. He's going to be able to keep from hitting anything, but he gets going. Let's go to the GT4s.
Absolutely. Christian Challenger with a great start over Matthew Thunhorst, who actually was good side-by-side alongside him until they got towards the end of the front straight, but now he's under pressure from Lyndon Swaby, actually, who's putting on some pressure behind them. So the GT4 is doing a great job just being nice and tidy as we head down towards turn 1. Nice on the braking there from Christian Challenger, just waiting there. Let's go to the TCRs.
Well, it was an absolutely wonderful start from Andrew Waring, as well as Justin Morton, who was really able to get up and challenge Travis Warling as they now dive down into turn 1. You see there Morton on the outside trying to make something happen in these front-wheel drive TCRs. Everybody keeping it relatively clean, though, through the first set of corners.
Good start to an endurance race. Looks like only issue we had was Jeff Schmeier with his spin, which took him a bit to try and get underway. We're now watching the fight between Josh Chin and Brian Bennett. This is for second, just behind James Walker.
Absolutely. Second place, a very tight battle between Chin and Bennett. And I can report that Eric Smith made a pass on Mark Stevenson for 5th position, just going through the about the 5th corner in the GP course. But look how close Chin is getting as they head up towards this chicane that takes them towards the long sweeping left-hander that will take them onto the Nordschleife for the first time. Here they go.
A difficult corner. We saw it cause problems in the Lotus 79s earlier this morning. So far, so good. And now they plunge back downhill as that fight for second continues. Chin putting immense pressure on the 71.
Immense pressure indeed, and the pressure is going to come from the track now that they're off of the GP circuit. Now you just have to race what's in front of you. You cannot focus on your competitors, otherwise you run the risk of clobbering a curb and possibly hitting the Armco that's so close to one another as you come across this beautiful track, sweeping 175 corners here.
Oh, and we had a spinner there. I think that was Christian Challenger smoking the tires a bit, so not a spinner. Looks like he got away with it at least. As these cars now head towards High Oaks, I'm keeping an eye on our Porsche Cup cars because they're coming up to fluke lots, and on cold tires, I have to imagine that's going to be a very dangerous corner.
And Joe, it's actually worth going to the lead of the TCRs because this is Joshua Collins in the BMW tucked in behind Andrew Waring, our leader in the TCRs, and Joshua's actually broken up this battle for the lead in the TCRs. He cannot seem to find pace to stay ahead of these guys, even though he's in the second to fastest class.
It's very true there, Adam. It looked like he was going to be able to get a little bit of run on the straightaways. That Beamer having a little bit more straight line speed, but he is just now a plug in the bottle here. Warling getting very, very held up. It's allowed for Justin Morton to close in behind him. Ooh. Kevin Hill,
There was a big bobble there from the BMW, and this has checked them up even more as Josh Collins causing all kinds of headaches, and now it's just an absolute train.
Well, we had a DNF already. Well, not a DNF, but a tow. Justin Kirby has towed, so he's going to have to use his first fast repair because he's completely demolished the front end of this car. But we're going to stay here because this is really letting the TCR leader get away, and knowing how draft dependent these cars are, it's going to be hard for the guys behind to catch him up again.
Very much is, Adam. These guys need that draft in these TCRs, relatively underpowered cars and front wheel drive, so not a lot of spit off of the line necessarily. So they're really going to need that, and you can see the bottleneck that this is really causing behind. As I was saying, it's Morton, Hill, Herbier, Halleck. They are all just on top of each other going through the twisty parts of the Nordschleife.
I can update you that Justin Kirby's incident was a single car. Nobody else got involved, thankfully. Always a big fear here at the start of the races whenever there's a wreck. And this battle for second behind Travis Warling is losing touch as Collins finally looks like he's got his feet underneath him. He might be able to overtake our leader. That could bring it back together a little bit.
It could indeed. That gap is holding steady at about just over a second and a half for the TCRs. Oh, but that's Morton. Morton catches some grass. He's going to go out to the outside, catches the outside barrier, able to keep it going the right way. He'll have to check and see damage.
Oof. He's going to have a lot of damage from that, I'm sure, but he will have a spare car. We're going to look at the replay. Almost looked like just maybe he sent it in a little hard.
Yeah. This is something that can happen really easily, DJ, as we get going at the beginning of the race when you're tucked in behind other cars. You could just fairly easily lose sight of your braking point, and he clips the grass there on the outside. Look at that.
Yeah, it's exactly what we saw this morning, a lot out of the Lotus 79s, and it's especially hard in these TCRs. There has been so much talk since the new tire model has been implemented on them, just how difficult they are to drive on cold tires. You've got to be extra careful. Front wheel drive, the tires don't heat up as well, and it really catching out Justin Morton.
Looks like Lynn Kinchlow also had a single car incident through miss, hit, and miss. We're instead switching up to Stevenson, who is chasing Eric Smith for that 4th spot in the 911 Cup class. They're already up the hill at the top, going through the carousel here. Is one of our oval meisters from last round, Mark Stevenson, who we're watching here, enjoying the bit of banking, but then it's back to road course racing.
Absolutely. Mark doing a great job transferring. I mean, this is the absolute test. Oh my goodness, Eric Smith clobbering the inside curb. They're almost going out into the grass. But this is the absolute test for an oval regular to come out and go racing here at the Nordschleife. This is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to road racing. And with 175 turns, this is absolutely the ultimate test of mettle when it comes to being a multi-discipline racer.
He's keeping immense pressure on Smith for the time being. He's got to watch out, though. The closer he rides behind him, the more at risk he is if Smith makes a mistake and collects him. As you can see, the barriers on either side just have nowhere for the drivers to get off the track. Essentially, they bounce right back on.
And our leader out to about a 2.5-second lead, James Walker over Brian Bennett. Then it's another 1.5 seconds back to Joshua Chin, another 1.5 seconds back to Eric Smith and Mark Stevenson, the battle we're watching now for that 4th position. And with such a long lap here, Joe, all these drivers just trying to focus on surviving this first lap, and we're only about halfway through, so I was about to make a comment that I'm not going to make until we see the flag stand one more time. But look at that, Eric Smith going off track just a little bit. Even though I tried not to curse it, Eric Smith's trying to prove me wrong.
He was certainly flirting with the edge of the track, just dipping wheel barely into the grass. Another extremely quick corner, set of corners here into Swallowtail. Let's see how they handle it as they try to woe the cars up. And it does seem that Stevenson's quite strong into those corners. I'm also curious what the slipstream is going to look like as Stevenson pops out of the banking of the mini carousel, and that might have cost him that slipstream. Falls back about 0.5 seconds. They're going to come up to the Duttinger hole here, Adam, and this is probably the best spot to pick up that draft.
Absolutely best spot to pick up the draft, but Stevenson looks like he might have heated up that those front tires just a little bit in that braking zone, so he's going to actually lose the draft just a little bit. He'll have enough draft to pull up close to him by the end of the Dottinger Hoa. 3 kilometers of just long straightaway here as they head towards the bridge that's going to take them on the left-hander. I saw a lot of these 911s really take early turn-ins underneath the bridge, which cost them time and stability. So as we keep going, this is going to be close. It's actually close between 7th and 8th, between Jason Wallet and Jeff Schmeier, as they're also in the Dottinger Hoa behind these guys.
Going to go side by side. I think Schmeier's going to take that position away, or at least try to, as they come up to Antonius Beach. Wallet to the outside in the blue machine and the black number 30. That's Jeff Schmeier. And now Wallet slips in behind into the tire tracks of Jeff Schmeier. They all break coming into Hohenron, and already in front of them, Walker has started lap number 2.
Yeah, lap number 2, so now I can say what I was going to say, which is that these drivers are just trying to survive the first lap. Our GT4s are now getting onto the Dottinger Hoa as well, and the battle for 8th and 9th positions starting to heat up between Nick Kuhn and Bruce Perry. This is Christian Challoner. Actually, this is Matthew Thunhorst we're watching. Christian Challoner is another 4 seconds up the road from these guys. But Bruce Perry in the number 39 about to make a pass on Nick Kuhn underneath the bridge. So there you see Matthew Thunhorst streaking through. Bruce Perry actually had to check up a little bit because Nick Kuhn had to take the left-hander to take the line underneath the bridge. When you have these cars set up to take the entire Nordschleife, they're not super stable at high speeds, so you can't make the tight passing like you can on a super speedway at those speeds.
Very much so, Adam, and it's really about finding that fine line for these drivers. Very, very difficult, but we're jumping back here to the battle. Ooh, this is, I believe, that is Samuel Harris has finally gotten himself past Adam Halleck. He's working on that pass for the majority of the lap and able to get it done.
Mark Stevenson's crashed, Joe.
And no, I think it was Bennett. I saw Bennett off track.
Stevenson's also off track, and this was a single car incident for Stevenson.
So simultaneous spins for both Bennett and Stevenson. Let's start with the 71. This is partway through the Grand Prix course. I think he's completely by himself.
So that's Stevenson.
Yeah, that's Stevenson's incident.
That's him clipping the outside grass, just gets it a little bit too deep, but is able to save it. So that's actually not a race-ending incident for him at all. And there's Brian Bennett having his own incident up ahead.
One more look at this one. Kind of similar. It's just into the corner, except in this case, he didn't touch the grass. Whoa, he's lucky it did not turn over. Did you see that thing pop?
That's about as close as you can get there. Jump going for quite a ride for him. That's going to wreck his tires, but fortunately, he's still going with that car in one piece. And that's all you can ask for after going off for a spin like that. You can do that on the GP course, but you can't do that on the Nordschleife.
Certainly brave with the curbs. You can see him once again clobbering it, coming towards High Oaks. And then they'll pick up pace back down to Flugplatz. Down in P5 for the GT4s, Espedy and Wood fighting for that position.
And they're working their way back onto the corners that make up the Nordschleife. And now Wood able to get a really good tow down at that long 3 kilometer straight. And now it is all about that damage avoidance. The 64 hot on the heels of the 7 trying to force a mistake.
You know, Joe, I've heard word that the BMW is not the most popular GT4 in iRacing, but there are quite a few of them here in our field today, which is awesome to see. This big blocky GT4 racing around here. They're sliding this thing through the Nordschleife. Seems to take the curves really well as well. Espedy, as we know, is a very proficient open wheel racer, and Andrew Wood trying to tackle Espedy now as Espedy's trying to take on a new style of racing here. And that's one of the things he continues to talk about, is how much he has enjoyed having to take different disciplines under his wing here at the majors. And as you can see, Wood, not a great exit heading up towards the jump, and now he's just a little bit too far back to tackle Espedy as they head towards the long right-hander that takes you under the first bridge.
Yep. Down towards the Swedish Cross is one of the longer places where they're flat to the floor, and you can see the cars just bounding and getting light over the many crests of this track. Yeah, interesting to note that the BMW is by far the most popular in this GT4 class. The McLaren follows it and barely is ahead of the Porsche, which I think only shows 2 drivers running in that one today, unfortunately.
Yeah. Quite a wide disparity compared to our European split, where it's mostly Porsches with a couple of McLarens, and I don't believe there's just a couple. There's maybe 2 GT4 BMWs, but here's Brian Barnes in one of those McLarens, one of the newer cars to the service. Absolutely gorgeous looking front end there.
Yes, as a McLaren fanboy, and I have to admit I have bias here, that this is my favorite. I was very glad to see that introduced. The highest McLaren, though, is still Thunhorst, the current championship rival here in the Pro Division of the Americas region in the majors. But Christian Challenger has been leading him. There you see, and Thunhorst, that gives you an idea. You could not see Christian Challenger anywhere around him. We didn't get to talk about it. Christian put a full 5+ seconds over him in qualifying. Even at the ring, that is jaw-dropping.
It's absolutely remarkable, Joe, in these cars. It shows you just how much of an experienced road racer Christian is. Absolutely mega, really, really taking this car to its absolute limits. He had a couple of bobbles in the later laps of qualifying. I think on his 3rd lap, he was telling us that he just parked it because he knew he got it wrong. But the times that he was able to put in, absolutely incredible.
Things are starting to calm already a little bit here on our 2nd lap. But one of the battles that just doesn't seem to go away is between Harris and Halleck. Now that Sam's gotten by, he's not able to shake that number 36.
Absolutely, DJ. These 2 guys just very, very close together on this track. The TCR is such a challenge to drive around here.
Well, what makes it particularly difficult is the fact that the car really does not like to have the brakes applied when you're coming in through a corner, and there you see that was Adam Halleck providing exactly what I was talking about. When you try to come in on the on this TCR a little bit sideways and get onto the brakes, it tends to really lock up and step out. Let's check out the replay here. You can see him do exactly that, keeping close behind Harris here, trying to do everything that he can, and then they're going to dive down here into this left-hander, and as it continues to bow around, you'll see it start to come into play where that car just steps out on him, starts to slide around the corner.
Yeah, I think this is into Defense Valley, which is a tough one. No, we're not going to get to see it, unfortunately. But that is a very tricky braking zone, no matter which car you are driving. So that robs us of that battle for at least a brief moment. I see that Andrew Wood and Espedy in 5th and the GT4s have stayed within about a second of each other. I'm willing to bet that if we see that about a second apart gap between drivers, we can probably anticipate them, Adam, being able to reel one another back in once they hit one of the long stretches.
Absolutely, and actually Wood was able to pass Espedy as Espedy got a tire into the grass heading up one of the steeper hills on this course. So that's how Wood was able to get past Espedy. Espedy hanging on to the back of Wood now and actually closing the gap quite a bit. So it looks like both of them much better at chasing each other down. I can also report that Ryan Steele in the TCR class made miss, and ended up clipping the outside barrier just a little bit getting into the grass. He's now fallen all the way back to 10th in that class.
I think we're going to see a number of drivers take that spare car here today just to try and see the checkered flag. Let's hope it doesn't turn into many minutes of repair in the meantime. But Andrew Wood retaining that 5th place. That's Espedy and the dark blue BMW that you see trying to chase the 64. Coming up to Flansgarden, the other place where you can get air like Flugplatz. And then over a little bit of a crest in the track, they'll plunge through the valley, hit the Beloff S's. This tends to be one of the faster parts of the circuit, but definitely not straight.
Definitely not, and this is actually one of the most fun parts of the circuit, actually, DJ. It's such a blast to drive through here. This back half of the circuit is honestly my favorite part of any course out here in iRacing.
I have to agree with you there, Adam. It is just an absolute driver's delight. You hear stories about guys back in the day talking about riding around this track and so many others like it, like the old Spa, and just how much of a treat it is when you knew you got it absolutely perfectly right, and you'd have to wait minute upon minute to come back and try to get that corner right again. And this, the absolute power down the valley into the mini carousel. Oh, if you get it right, there is no better feeling.
Along Dottinger Ho, it looks like Espedy was not quite close enough. A little bit farther behind them, Hutchison and Brown in 10th in the GT4s. I think they're going to probably see a bit of a slipstream battle. Let's see. And this is two different makes of cars as well. This will be telling to see how they behave as they are foot to the floor once again.
Absolutely. The BMW has a much bigger footprint, whereas that Porsche is pretty slick, but it's not going to matter because the amount of air that the Porsche is punching out is going to allow Zachary Brown to get alongside. Now he starts to lose a little bit of ground to Wayne Hutchison. Wayne, though, not able to keep the traction going. Let's see whether he jumps in behind Zachary. He's actually going to stay to the outside, so this might give an opportunity. As we see up ahead, that's Bruce Perry and Nick Kuhn also having a battle for 8th and 9th in this class. Looks like that's Nick Kuhn's going to hold on to that, and Zachary Brown going to hold on to a 10th place as Wayne Hutchison did not decide to get back into the draft and try and challenge him back.
Yeah, and that dropped him a fair ways behind, so it seems Zach Brown actually has the advantage in a straight line, at least based on what we saw there. This is now switched over to Brown within the top 10, so let's turn our eyes elsewhere. And I think that the podium might be up for grabs in the TCRs. Kevin Hill and Vincent Laherbier about half a second away from one another.
You're very right, Joe. Leherbier did a really good job there down the Dodinger Hoa, holding on to that draft and really being able to suck up behind Hill here. Leherbier has been driving a very, very calm and collected race, not going too crazy on much of anything. A little bit slower on that last lap, and there you see as we go into that first hairpin, that first corner, just how much he's able to close in. Not trying to be aggressive, just maybe trying to force an error.
Nothing coming his way quite yet, but Leherbier sticks with it. Kevin Hill withstanding that pressure in the 52. This is down into Ford, the right-hander, which will take them towards the Dunlop hairpin. Another corner with quite a bit of banking, but it's on the modern GP course, so it's not quite like what you see at the carousel as they both chuck it in. Very different lines on entry between them, though.
Yeah, very much so. It looks like Leherbier is just taking it a little bit smoother. He was trying to get a more of a straight angle out of the corner, whereas it looked like that Hill was just really trying to chuck it in there, maybe be a little bit more aggressive, use the front wheel drive of these cars to his advantage.
I think we have a little bit of an update on one of our Porsche Cups as we now look at Wood and Espedy still fighting for fifth. Adam, you caught what happened to Jason. What's going on?
Yeah, Jason Walsh just ended up having a little bit of a self-spin, actually just through that corner right there, ended up clipping the inside grass and almost hitting the Armco barrier. Was able to stop in time, back himself out, and get going once again. But he's got to be a little careful because Christian Challoner only 10 seconds behind, and believe it or not, Christian could possibly catch up to the back of the Porsche 911s depending on how much damage the back markers have. So Jason collected no damage out of that incident, but he's got to be a little careful that he doesn't end up getting caught by this lower class.
As we ride on board with Espedy, he's pulling behind Andrew Wood, but not pulling enough. Stuck at about 0.4 of a second. Up and over through the Swedish cross, hit the binders down into Ehrenberg. If they don't fight too much, they actually have a good shot at Liam Quinn, who's only about 3 to 4 seconds up the road. So all depends on if they really want to get that fifth place or settle that out, or if they want to try and focus forward and see if they have the pace to keep up with the 25.
Another battle that I've been watching is Joshua Chin and Eric Smith. These two guys battling for P2 in the 911s. Eric Smith has been gaining on Chin over the last couple of laps. I think he's looking for an opportunity to try and pass. You can see how much deeper he goes on the brakes. Chin's pretty decent on exit, but Eric Smith has been able to match him. So better on braking, equal on exit means Eric Smith continues to gain time. And now they're starting to head uphill on one of the longer straightaways. So this is going to give an opportunity for Smith if he wants to try and make a pass. But looks like Brian Barnes has had a problem.
One of our GT4 drivers, the number 4.
And he had a big moment, Joe.
Yeah, he went up and over, unfortunately. This was an out-and-hour forced. You're going to see it, at the end of this stretch. It's through compression. You pick up a lot of speed. There's a kinked entry into here, DJ. It always scares me, honestly, no matter what car I drive. It seems like maybe it caught him out.
Yeah, I think it very well might have. There you see that kinked entry like you talked about, carried a little bit too much speed. That brought him out. Ooh, big hit. Lucky he didn't roll the car, but that's going to be a lot of damage.
Yeah, wound up having to take a tow. And I assume he's going to be getting into his spare car after that. Lynn Kinchlow actually just coming out after 9 minutes of repairs, just past him. There you see his McLaren on screen and taking off on lap 3, it appears, for that 44. Definitely one of the ones that we witnessed having issues earlier on. Back to Kevin Hill and Vincent Leherbier trying to decide that final step on the podium. They're in the thick of the woods here in the Nordschleife. This looks like maybe hit and miss that they're coming into. Yes, indeed.
Indeed it is, and I have to say Leherbier's been getting a little bit more aggressive. I think he smells some blood in the water. Kevin Hill has been making a couple of errors, a little bit too much of the curbs. It looks like he's been riding over them very, very aggressively, and Leherbier just trying to press the issue.
He's been pressing him for a bit of time now. It's not producing anything, but he certainly can have a little patience with it because he's got 2 hours left just to get himself into third. Of course, we haven't even talked about the pit strategy yet, which will come into play. The drivers can expect some stops. It'll differ between the classes, of course, based on how much fuel they have. Oh, we had a problem with Chris Yatito as well in the 888.
Yeah, this was another self-inflicted incident. Ended up going over the curbing on the back half of the course, and major impact with the outside wall. He's got some toe damage. Let's take a look at this.
Up from the helicopter. And, ooh, he was way wide. Yeah, into the grass, and from there, you're kind of a passenger. Just pancakes that left-hand side. I think that's Jason Wallet that snuck through. Oh, and, whoa, LeHerbier, it was bump drafting Kevin Hill up Kesselchen. That...
I have never seen a TCR bump draft, and I never thought I would hear the term bump drafting when it comes to the Nürburgring. But LeHerbier did it. Check this out, Joe.
This is awful brave up through Kesselchen as well, because it's not a straight part of the course. You really have to feel some trust that you know where that driver in front is going to go. Looked like maybe just a tiny little touch there, just a nudge.
Joe, if we hop up to P2 in the 911s, Eric Smith just made the pass on Joshua Chin on the Dottinger Hoa just as they got to the bridge. No drama there, but Joshua Chin backing off early as they head towards the braking zone. Eric Smith definitely a little bit faster on race pace right now before the pit stops, and Joshua Chin realizing that and letting him go.
I don't think that one needs a replay. Just pretty simple slipstream pass. But Smith now up into P2, 9 seconds behind James Walker. With him being freed, can he pick up the pace and try and challenge the 97, or is this about as quick as he can go?
We'll have to wait to see on that one for sure, but the battle between P2 in the GT4 is Matthew Thunhorse and Lyndon Swaby are about to hit the Dottinger Hoa, and Swaby is close enough that he should be able to effect a pass here.
Yeah, Adam, I've been keeping an eye on Swaby. He has been very, very close this entire lap, eking it in from about 1.5 seconds. And now on the Dottinger Hoa, he is just going to tuck up behind the rear end of that McLaren and see if that BMW can get the good draft.
It's not working that great so far, but they still got plenty of the straightaway to go. Now he's making inroads. Now that McLaren is getting bigger in his windscreen. They go under Antonius Beach, and he has lifted. So, Swaby may be already trying to play the long game here and save a little bit of fuel.
It's not the worst strategy, Joe. We do anticipate these drivers in the GT4s having to make 3 stops over the course of the race, but we're going to jump back to that battle in the TCRs with Hill and LeHerbier.
This is still for third, but it is still Hill that is leading. They're coming through the mini carousel themselves. This is our latest battle that'll approach the long Dottinger Hoa. This is the most likely spot to try and make a pass here on the Nordschleife itself. Otherwise, most drivers we anticipate will probably try and get some overtakes done on the Grand Prix course where they've got a lot more width of the circuit. As they pick up speed, this is looking good for LeHerbier, 140 miles an hour, and he's already got a pace advantage over Hill with that huge hole being punched in the air. The mint green number 52 can't do much to hold him back, and the 27 is by, but now he starts to stall out.
He does. That's the problem of hitting that big wall of clean air. And now it's going to be a matter of who can be a little bit better on the brakes. Advantage shift backs to Hill as it starts to go, but LeHerbier is fully in front. They keep it clean as they get onto the binders and work their way back into the final parts of the circuit and onto the GP track about now. That was 2 laps in the making for LeHerbier, but he gets it done.
Can also report that Justin Morton made the pass on Sam Harris, also on the Dottinger Hoa for P5 in the TCR class as well. And we have our first pit road taker, I believe, on schedule, which is going to be Trent Brown. He's going for a 4-lap stint to start off this race.
As we come up to Bruce Perry now, and this is the fight for 7th in the GT4s. Brown, Perry, and Kuhn. Kuhn much closer to Bruce in front of him, though. And they're running out of Grand Prix track. if he is faster, he's going to have to try and overtake him soon, or else it's going to be a lot harder at a moment.
Riding on board, and you can see Brown there, all eyes on his monitors, keeping an eye on what he's got to do. Love the fact that he is not glancing up in that virtual rear view mirror. He has just got his eyes fixed on the road ahead. That's exactly how you need to pilot a 24-hour or any sort of endurance race.
Been seeing a lot of hockey uniforms in the background on our onboard cams lately. So Zach Brown providing that this evening for us, and now down out of the north curve, he is continuing to gap Bruce Perry up to about 1.3 seconds already. This is becoming more of a 2-car fight than a 3-car fight.
Absolutely. Stanley Cup playoffs obviously going on right now as we speak. So as these drivers racing around, that's why we're seeing so many of the hockey jerseys in the background. But yeah, for sure. Look at that. He's just starting to pull away and leave the 2 guys behind him. So great job from him to start running away right now. And Bruce Perry under pressure from Nick Kuhn.
Nick Kuhn's going to have a great shot coming up to Flugplatz. Let's see what these cars look like coming up over the infamous crest here from the onboard. Do we get in the air? No, maybe just a tiny little hop, but not all that dramatic. In the meantime, he loses a little bit rather on Bruce Perry, as that Bimmer certainly seems to have a little bit more straight line speed.
Yeah, it might, and that may just be a little bit of the tweaking and tuning these drivers are able to do. Whoo, cocking its left front wheel there like a little terrier coming around a corner. Absolutely love seeing that from these GT4s.
You know, honestly, DJ, that's one thing that I really love about this car class in iRacing. You know, everybody kind of, I think, comes in thinking, oh, I want to drive the Indy cars, Formula One cars, all these high-powered machines. And I've wound up falling in love with all of these things. The little GT4 cars, the Skippy, the SRF, we got a car off in front of them. That is actually Zach Brown, who loses some time, so all the gap that he had made now goes away, but I think he managed to avoid an incident. Let's take a look at the replay. But the point I was making there, DJ, is that I almost feel like the sort of immersion, the imagination, the realism of thinking I could hop into one of these GT4s and race them makes them so much more fun.
For sure, Joe, and you're completely right. So many folks jump into the iRacing service thinking that they're going to go out and drive NASCARs. There you see Brown just getting a little bit too much speed there, catching the curb on the way on the inside and taking a little trip across the grass. But these GT4s, they're super user-friendly. They're a lot of fun to drive. They're not nearly as quirky necessarily as some of the GTEs that are out there and some of the other GTs. They're just a very driver-friendly car.
Up at the front of our GT4 class, Christian is actually starting to beat Jason Wallet. Now, not sure if it's going to stay that way forever, depending on how racy Jason feels, because he should have the straight line advantage over Christian in this Porsche Cup car. But we're seeing this amongst all 3 of the classes. They're kind of blending together, and I'll be honest, I feel like I expected that a little bit. They are relatively close on pace.
Absolutely. Jason Wallet actually just had another self-spin, unfortunately, so that's what's put him behind Christian Challoner. But as they're going through the second half of this course, through the fun part, I'd like to call it, Jason's going to have to stay close behind Christian if he wants to pass him on the Dottinger Hohe, because the straight line advantage, while it is there, it's not that drastic. So as you can see, Christian just starting to pull away from Jason, which is really impressive in that BMW GT4 compared to the 911 Cup.
Yeah, that'll be the traffic. I think they'll be fighting more, so at least for a while, than the coming up to lap slower traffic, because even our leader is still about a third of a lap behind the nearest lapped car, unfortunately. And that overall leader still being James Walker in the 97 Porsche Cup car. But Christian Challoner continuing to dominate the field today, and unfortunately for Matthew Thunhorse, looking like he's going to extend that gap to him. Meanwhile, got a nice little fight. Ooh, and just slipping up alongside. I think this is in our Porsche Cup class. Yes, this is Smith and Chin.
Yep, and this is Smith going past Chin once again. Chin was able to make the pass on Smith due to an error from Smith in the back half of the course, but Eric Smith just hung on to the back of him, got up to the Dottinger Hoa, and zips right on by. Now, unfortunately for them, they are not gaining on Walker. Walker has put 3 seconds on them this lap alone. So these two guys are effectively battling for P2, so while they're working together now, don't expect that to be the case for the entire race.
Been watching Josh Chin in series such as the Precision Racing League for a while now, and he's shown how good he is there. And here he's trying to go for a podium in the same car that we see the Road Racing World Championship compete here on iRacing, these Porsche 911 Cups, and has been for a couple years now. And if even the masters of iRacing have trouble with these cars, you can imagine how hard it is for these guys to try and fight. As we head back down to the TCRs, as Adam, we got a nice little fight.
Yeah, this is actually in the GT4s between Andrew Wood and Austin Espedy. These two, P5, and once again, inseparable, these two guys. So as they start to streak up towards the Dottinger Hoa once again, Wood just starting to streak away from Espedy as they get on the grip portion of the track as they go along the long right-hander onto the Dottinger Hoa. He's gapped Espedy by about 7/10. I'm not sure that's going to be quite enough to stay out of the draft. With 3 kilometers of straightaway to go, Espedy's going to start clawing back that speed disadvantage. And if he stays in the tire tracks of Wood, he should be able to get alongside him by the time they go into the bridge.
He is reeling him in now, and it's starting to close down. It's at half a second. But does Espedy dare try to take it side by side? We saw some wheel-to-wheel battles into Hohenron earlier with the Lotus 79s, and those continued to end in tears. This time, Espedy does not try and challenge his rival, and he's going to stay back. But DJ, I kind of feel like I expected to see this sort of stuff from our GT4s, because from our time witnessing them in PRL on Monday nights, it looks like the slipstream just doesn't do a whole lot for these GT cars.
Yeah, it's not as much as you would think, and that's just kind of the basic nature of being GT cars. There's not nearly as much downforce to be pushing down into the track as, say, an open wheeler where you really are able to just take massive advantage of that. The GTs, the lower level GTs, it's not as much. You've got to be really close there. And I also have to say, Andrew Wood on that very widely defense, he was just moving the car ever so slightly left to right, trying to just disrupt that path of air, and I think that may have put Espedy just a little bit on the back foot.
Absolutely. As they plunge down the hill into the Dunlop hairpin, they continue to run line astern, trying to sort out this fifth position rather, in the GT4 class. I did just see Chin catch up to Smith once again, but they reached Ehrenberg and he backed off of it, but using the slipstream well to keep the 32 honest.
Absolutely. These two pretty much inseparable right now. Josh Chin actually looks very strong at the first half of the course, whereas Eric Smith seems to have the advantage of the back half, which is probably why you see Chin just right up the tailpipe of Eric Smith. The trouble with doing that is that even though these cars don't have all that much downforce, you can run into the problem where it ends up taking off any of the downforce you get onto that front splitter, which can make it so that you lose front tire grip going around the corners. You end up pushing wide. So that's part of the reason why Josh Chin seems to be missing his lines a little bit, tucked in behind our second place driver, Eric Smith.
Well, we mentioned before we had at least one car that we think might be a scheduled stop, trying to play a strategy in reverse, but nobody else so far. And we could expect many of the drivers to wait until lap 7, which it is lap 5 right now. But this is a battle between Justin Morton and Sam Harris, still tussling for P5 in the TCR class, these forward-wheel drive cars, making sure that those tires get a workout on the front end. I can't imagine what they're going to be like at the end of the stint doing double duty.
And they're going to be very, very rough, I can tell you, Joe. As we ride on board here with Justin Morton in VR, you can see him there trying to recover a little bit from that shaky start where he fell down the order. He had been able to work his way around Harris, and now Harris just not really letting him get away. So this battle proving a very, very good match between equals.
So as we watch these two work their way down the hill and up towards the final chicane of the GP course, Harris continues to ride in the tire tracks of the number 9. We watch his onboard there for a brief moment with his VR set taking him through the green hell. And in fact, he's entering back onto the green hell here in just a moment. Big crest around this long left-hander, and almost a street course coming off of it with the barrier right at the edge of the track for that little support pit.
Yeah, DJ, I don't know if you saw what I saw, but Sam Harris just about missed that chicane coming out towards that left-hander onto the Nurburgring, and Sam able to hang on to the back of Justin, but that was a scary moment there.
Yeah, very, very hair-raising there for the number 42. Looks like he may be pushing a little bit hard at this point. Oh, he's taken a lot of curb all the way through here, guys. There you see all the way through those corners, just a massive amount of curb, and you can see just how much Morton has been able to pull away as a result.
Oof. Now, let's talk about championship implications here, because we saw the Drivers' Championship briefly. And I'm looking at our leaders. Well, some of our top 4 in the points, well, 3 of those 4 are leading. James Walker, 4th in the points. He's leading the Porsche 911 Cups. Christian Chandler, leader in the points, leads the GT4s. Andrew Waring, who is leading the TCRs, is 3rd in the points. The only one amongst those 4 that's not leading is Matthew Thunhorst, who's 2nd right now. And the reason I bring that up is because of the way they do the points here, Adam. In the multi-class, you take an extra blow if you're in the same class as your rival.
Yeah, absolutely. So that the points get a little bit more separated like that. But that being said, if you do take a win, then that means that you get the full win points. So that's why you see a lot of drivers, they will try and figure out what class their championship rival's going to drive in, and drive another class to make sure they get the full win worth of points, because you get less for the positions going downward in a multi-class series. So that's why things get so challenging.
Unfortunately for Matt, he's the only one that is doubled up, and he's up against the only double champion, Christian Challenger. And so far, it's proven very much in favor of the current champion, Christian, by about 24 seconds between himself and Thunhorst.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but that is an absolutely gigantic margin.
Wood is off. The 64 has had an issue, and he may have collected Espedy here. Ooh, yeah, he is going to make contact. You're going to see it on the replay. That's Espedy in the blue car, Wood in the white BMW. I think this is climbing up Kesselchen.
Yeah, Espedy does get a little bit of damage here, so we're going to see Wood up ahead. He's going to just get a little bit loose. He's going to clip the grass on the outside right there, and then you're going to see him cross across the track. Espedy's trying to whoa up, but can't find a place to go. Ends up making a little bit of contact. Hopefully that doesn't affect him too poorly, but he doesn't look like he has that much damage.
No, I'm looking at his car right now, Adam, and it looks like for Austin, it may just be a little bit of cosmetic damage on the right rear of the car. I don't think anything was knocked out, just even the most minor of scrapes.
Just another thing to report, Joe. Josh Shin has passed Eric Smith again on the Dottinger Hoa, so that swap over continues to happen for P2 in the 911 machines.
Absolutely. And so with an hour and 42 left on the clock, I think the drivers look like they're starting to really finally settle in. This probably is going to be the most calm that they're going to see, I'd say, during this stage, because as I mentioned earlier, they have not yet caught up to the lap traffic of the next group of the lapped cars. So keep an eye out, because when eventually we see James Walker get up behind the next driver up the road, he's going to basically have nothing but headache as he tries to overtake slower cars, especially when he gets to the Nordschleife.
Well, and his one saving grace out of that may be that we estimate the TCRs are going to be able to go a lap longer on fuel than their competitors. So they'll be able to go to around lap 8. We think the 911s and the GT4s will be coming in on lap 7. So that may save him very slightly, but it still means he's going to run into that traffic.
Got a little battle with Schmeier and Stevenson. This is, I believe, in our Porsche 911 Cup class. So you see for 5th position, we're watching Mark earlier, and we saw his onboard as he tried to chase the 30, but hasn't really been able to make much in the way of progress past him. That said, he is in 10th, so the attrition has helped him.
Absolutely, and Jeff Schmeier and Mark Stevenson, who are riding on board with. Stevenson's had his own a couple of spins on this track, but has not gathered any damage from that, so he's fortunate, trying to get his way past Schmeier now. Ooh, takes it deep into the S's, just barely makes it. It's going to be a little bit of a stressful moment, but as you can see, nerves of steel from Mark as we're riding on board with him. Fantastic job for him to try and hold on to that car, as it seems like a lot of people, DJ, are starting to take those S's right towards the end of that lap pretty aggressively now.
Yeah, Adam, I think they're really recognizing that that's an area to really try to push the car. As you can see just how much push they are getting through there, almost off the track. These drivers have got to be careful. They go too hard on this. We see what happens if you just touch the grass.
So as they now hit High Oaks, they're going to be able to unwind, really pick up the pace, and the cars will fly, quite literally, as they come to Flugplatz. Let's stay on board. Let's see what the inside feels like. Yeah, that's definitely a little hop from them. Got to get on the brakes just a little bit through Flugplatz, and then once again, foot to the floor towards the Swedish Cross. This is a very good run from Stevenson. Go ahead.
He's an excellent run right now, as we see Andrew Wood actually in the pits after his particular incident. But look how close he is getting, and look at that. He has to be very careful on the brakes, very careful on the gas as they go over that crest to make sure he doesn't get into the back of Schmeier. Very great job as they dive underneath the bridge. Once again, I love this onboard shot, getting to see Stevenson. You can see head down. He's definitely determined to try and make a pass here soon.
And he's in a good position to do so. He's only a car length back. You can practically read the license plate on the back of that number 30. As they slowed up through Audenauer Forest, does he continue to apply the pressure? Does he keep it right up the tailpipe towards Metzgefeld now? He loses a little bit, just slightly slower than Jeff Schmeier through that last little twisty bit. He's going to have to regain that. So, braking hard, very difficult braking zone into Metzgefeld. Almost 2 apexes into one. You can see him go a little wide there. And once again, caught out as he pushes hard to attempt to overtake the number 30. Now coming towards miss, hit, miss. An incredibly scary corner, especially in cars like this, which don't necessarily always like to turn all that well. But this time they're going to be able to navigate it successfully, braking hard into Defense Valley. And that looked very strong for Stevenson. Once again, closing it down to within almost a car length up to that dark blue number 30 machine. It does look like the binders are much more favorable for the 53 currently.
And much more favorable, and look at how close he is as he starts to head up towards the uphill. Now, there's going to be this left-hand jink and then a sharp right-hand corner, and he's got to be right on the back of his bumper if he wants to try and make a pass up the next uphill section. He's going to actually think about looking around the outside, as Jeff Schmeier actually looks like he covers off the inside. So this is going to give a good run to Stevenson, but this is such a stressful place to pass. We'll see whether or not Stevenson thinks about it. He looks to the outside, and he backs out of it. Smart move. You got to survive the full hour and a half that's left in order to make it through this.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, that the track kinks back and forth so much up this hill. It can sometimes be dangerous. Even if you do get a run, you need some trust in your competitor. And as he once again approaches the back of him, oh, he thinks about it up into Bravery corner, and he actually makes the pass. Bravery is indeed on the side of the 53 as Mark Stevenson makes, to me, so far, what is the pass of the race.
100%. Let's take a look at this again, because Stevenson, I mean, this is not a place you're supposed to make a pass, but look at this on the helicopter shot here as they go through. Stevenson's just gaining so much time on Schmeier. He looks at that Bravery corner and thinks, yeah, I can stick it up the inside there. So here he comes alongside. Oh, it's so close, nip and tuck, and then he just puts his nose in. Schmeier gives him the room, and Stevenson goes straight through.
Yeah, it looks like he scared him off the racing line, and that worked a treat. It was gutsy, especially this early in the race, but whatever you can get away with and have no damage, tip of the hat for Mark Stevenson. My only criticism of Mark is that he's got a VW-related car that has the number 53 on it, and he didn't put a particular paint scheme on there.
Well, don't you dare tell Porsche fans that this is VW related.
Anyways, as we come to an hour and a half left to go, this has been a lot of fun to watch, including that battle for third, which still has not gone away. Leherbier and Hill currently in favor of the 27.
Yeah, Leherbier continuing to hold that advantage, but Kevin Hill, after getting past, not letting him go away, very much closing down. And this is a little added kink to all of this. That is Justin Kirby and Chris Tito coming up behind them in those 911 Cup cars. So that's going to add a wrinkle to this already heated battle, Joe.
Taking a little bit of curb there, as they once again pick up the pace, get on the throttle, and start to pick up speed. And now you can see them being lapped. Well, not lapped, actually. That's Justin Kirby coming back through, trying to simply get up with his class. He is way behind the leaders. He had problems on the first lap, took a long bit of repairs, and is once again on the circuit, but now has the added woe of having to overtake a lot of slower cars and not be given any sort of blue flags in the process.
You know, and even though blue flags are provisional, DJ, this still makes it very difficult to go by, and this is where we're seeing the first of our multi-class action.
Yeah, exactly. These guys are ostensibly racing for position on track right now, so no impetus here on Leherbier to let him by, but this very much is now there. That's Kirby able to get by, go on. That may have checked up Leherbier ever so slightly, but still able to pull a pretty decent gap. Now they've got Tito coming up behind as well as we look out the back of Vincent's machine.
Yeah, I think Tito is another one that similarly came into a wreck on the first lap and came in, looks like he was in for about 5 minutes, and then has returned to the circuit to try and regain a little bit of that time. He also seems like he's going to try and play a patient game, knows that it's not worth trying to risk the race of these other drivers up through Kesselchen yet again, and this is actually going to be his best chance to try and sneak through, since this Porsche has so much more power than the Audis.
And sneak through he does. There he goes on by. Maybe a little whiff of dirty air there for Vincent Leherbier, but everything staying fine and dandy. And I have to say, the loser out of that looks like it was Kevin Hill. He dropped back a couple of tenths of a second. The gap now hovering around 1 full second.
You can see visibly how much farther apart they are as well, which gives us a chance to maybe step away from this, because Chin and Smith continue to trade that spot back and forth. Right now, it's in favor of the 93. Eric behind him by about half a second as they come through the chicane towards the final corner on the GP course.
Absolutely, and Chin and Smith almost identical lap times last time around, so they're definitely pacing each other. That being said, Chin is the one who's losing out to his raw pace, because his best lap is an 8:30.6 versus Eric Smith's 8:31.174. So that was his last lap, which was actually his fastest. So Chin actually is losing a little bit of pace here in this battle with Smith, whereas Smith is actually gaining pace by battling with Chin.
Fascinating. And the good news for the pair of them is that it's a whole 12 seconds ahead of Brian Bennett. So right now they're not under threat. As that was a big slide from Jin there coming towards High Oaks. Hopefully he can keep that under control. Wouldn't want to be overheating the rear tires on these things at this stage.
Yeah, Matthew Thunhorst and Lyndon Swaby actually pretty close together here for P2 in the GT4s. Now, this would be even worse for Thunhorst in the championship if he were to get passed by Swaby, because not only would he lose that second position in class, but he would drop back to third, which would put him even further behind in the points to Christian Challoner, and he'd lose places to Walker and Waring if the race were to finish as it is. But as you can see, that McLaren very good off of the tight corners here. It's just when they get to the faster Nordschleife where it seems like Swaby has the advantage in the Bimmer.
And we've heard Matt talk about between the races, attributed his championship to staying consistent, getting those good finishes when possible. So, yeah, I have to agree. I think right here, this is going to be important for him to stay in second and lose as few points as possible, because he's generally not typically challenging for victories, but is at times, just not as often as we see Christian.
You're very correct on that, Joe. And there is one other thing that I think may be plaguing on Thunhorst's mind right now, and that Swaby has seemed very, very comfortable to ride behind that McLaren up to this point. Now, we, like I said, anticipate about lap 7, which should be the next time by for these guys to make the pit stop. So has Swaby maybe done enough fuel saving down the Dodingerhoa to be able to overcut Thunhorst, and maybe that's how he jumps him?
Overcutting by a whole lap at the Nordschleife is a huge ask for any driver. We know that some of the TCR drivers are probably going to try that with the draft that they have, but not many of them are in draft positions, DJ, so I don't believe fuel saving is going to play that much of a factor down in that class, even if that was the plan going into the race.
Yeah, exactly. This is really the only battle, Adam, that I see fuel saving potentially being a thing, because you're right. It's not like we're running around on the GP circuit here where it's a couple of miles and you can really wing it out. If you misjudge 13 miles, you're in a whole bunch of trouble.
Speaking of trouble, Leherbier is still in trouble with Kevin Hill on top of him for that third position in the GT4, or the TCRs rather. They just exited the Nordschleife, picking up pace, that kinetic number 27, trying to represent for his team here and catch them as many points as he can. The sun, though, has continued to rise. Remember, they started this quite early in the morning, I believe at just after 8 a.m. virtual standard time. So by the time this race finishes, it's going to be very close to noon, with the sun at its highest and two wheels off into the dirt for Vincent Leherbier starting to show some cracks there.
He's got to be very careful about that. We haven't seen a lot of mistakes be drawn out on the GP circuit with going off into the grass, but if he makes a mistake like that on the Nürburgring, on the Nordschleife rather, it will be absolutely brutal for him.
Well, that looked a lot better there for Vincent, as he pulls away by a few tenths on Kevin Hill. And, ooh, big gain there, though. Looks coming through the hairpin. Hill stronger around that portion of the course. Now, this is an open setup series.
Joe, Thunhorst is off.
Oh, my goodness. This is an Oudenauer forced.
Oh,
he's going to lose a spot. You're right. As we come over to it, we're going to take a glance at the replay. Makes a big hit with the wall on the left-hand side after compression. It's right on board.
This is a nightmare, DJ, for the championship hopes. Absolutely a nightmare for him.
Absolutely terrible, and I just checked this out. It looks like he just tried to cut the corner a little bit too much, clobbered the curb, yeah, and that just sent him careening off the track. So Thunhorst making a very, very uncharacteristic mistake. You can see some of the damage, and that car does not look like it is handling well. Definitely crabbing ever so slightly, not exactly performing the way he'd like it to.
Yeah, he seems off the pace. He's lost a lot of time to Swaby, who he was comparable to in pace before that incident.
He's got
So
another 14 miles to go around this thing
Yeah.
before he gets back to the pit lane. Similar to Austin Espedy, who recently had a moment where he hit the outside barrier. He's got a little bit of a toe issue himself and his BMW down in 5th position. So it looks like the attrition of just trying to race this track is starting to get to people.
Yeah, this is going to be a long ask for Matthew Thunhorst, but I don't blame him. It's even longer if you sit and take a tow, but he's just going to have to really tiptoe and be careful as he completes this lap and can come and take his spare car. At least it came scheduled close to when we anticipate many of the drivers coming in for pit stops. Speaking of which, Walker's actually on the Dottinger Hoa now, so I'm curious to see if that 97 elects to come in like we're anticipating.
Yeah, and that's going to be just it, DJ. It's going to be down to the strategy. And I think that if there was a good time to get toe damage and to need your spare car, now is probably it.
I completely and totally agree with that, although I think for Matthew Thunhorst, he would have preferred it be on the back end of the track and not as early into the lap as he is now.
Here comes our leader, the Forge driver, continuing on from where they showed their force over in New Hampshire, and he is indeed in. Flies down to the cones, has to hit that 35 mile an hour limit, 37 mile an hour limit, and is the first of the front runners to take a scheduled stop. Smith so far back, it's about 18 seconds. It's a big gap between himself and the leader, but he's also going to join him in pit lane. So is Josh Chin. And so it's all kicking off now.
And the big news is that Josh Chin lost 6 seconds to Eric Smith just in this last lap alone. So maybe Chin was a little closer on fuel than we thought. Started with a little bit less. But it looks like pretty much everybody in that GT, the 911 class, is coming to pit road this time by, which totally makes sense. It's only probably as far as it can go.
So definitely fairly long stops for the cars, it looks like, as James Walker is still taking his service. And now he's joined by Brian Bennett. Behind him, Josh Chin, Eric Smith, Mark Stevenson is in, Jeff Schmeier, waiting for Daniel B. Johnson. The last of the Porsche Cup cars before you start to hit our GT4s, with Christian Challenger still leading the way up there. Ooh, and back out first is Eric Smith. So, Eric trying to switch things up, a little bit of a different strategy perhaps here.
Yeah, this is interesting because Walker now comes out. He took another 30 seconds of fuel compared to Smith. So a different strategy play for Eric Smith. Now we know Walker has the race pace. So this might just be an attempt to try and slow Smith down a little bit, trying to make Smith take time to get past Walker on track, even if this is going to end up swapping over at the second pit stop.
I was going to say, I think you're right. It appears that he's banking on track position being pretty important, which I'm certain it will be if they meet on the Nordschleife. He's not going to give an easy time to James to try and overtake him. At least I wouldn't expect it if I was Walker. And looks like the rest of them are out. Chin in third. Stevenson, I think he jumped to fourth in that.
And Christian Challenger coming into the pits now for his stop in the GT4s, the lead of the GT4s. He is a good 45 seconds ahead of Lyndon Swaby in that second position, who now is pretty much running alone with Liam Quinn behind him 10 seconds back. So here's Christian Challenger in that BMW GT4 taking his first pit stop on lap 7, just as predicted.
So for once, our strategy information is playing out how it was expected to. Looks like Jason Wallet going to follow Christian in. Still been trailing behind him. Lyndon Swaby finally gets to the pits.
Yeah, so that overcut there for Swaby not playing out as it may have in my head. Is Challenger up on the jacks, though? Is he taking tires there, guys?
I believe he is. Wow. And I think that makes sense because I do believe they can take tires and fuel at the same time in these cars, I want to say.
Well, it sure looks like that worked out for him. He's out in pretty quick succession, actually. Much shorter stop than those who are taking just fuel in the 911s. So Christian Challenger back out on track well ahead of Jason Wallet.
Yeah, I would think that, honestly, it's a no-brainer on taking tires. While it may give you cold tires to come back out on, the pace advantage seems like it would nullify any sort of trouble that you have trying to get those warmed up. Meanwhile, down at the TCRs, here we are again. We keep coming back to it, but little has changed in the time that we've witnessed this back and forth between Leherbier and Hill.
No, Vincent's been able to really wind the lap back down again. We saw a couple of those errors that he was making through the GP section of the circuit. Once these two drivers got out back onto the Nordschleife, everything calmed down a little bit, and Vincent was able to keep going. But Kevin Hill continuing to be within a second of Vincent at all times, just trying to see if he can press that driver, the number 27, into a little bit more of a mistake.
Up and over the crest to Swallowtail, and now through. Whoa! Popping out behind him. Kevin Hill over anticipating how much speed he can use through the mini carousel. And that was costly, because now they're hitting the Dottener Hoe, and he's probably going to be outside of the slipstream.
You're very right on that, Joe. The gap now looking like it's going to be holding at about 1.2 seconds as they go. Now, I anticipate with the speeds that they get, it'll normally max out that draft at around 1.4, 1.5 seconds. So Hill will be able to get a little bit of it, but it's not going to be as powerful if he hadn't made that error.
Yeah, it started about 1.2, 1.3. It's already down to 0.9 of a second. So while he will be closer, he might actually be right back about where he was before he made that mistake through the mini carousel. It's down to 0.7 of a second into Hohenron, and yep, it's down to half a second between them. So he's got to do the work all over again. Now, we're not anticipating these cars to pit this lap. We're told lap 8 most likely for an even split, and indeed, looks like both Hill and Leherbier will stay out.
And that's going to make things fairly interesting, actually, because this is going to put some of the TCRs in and amongst the back-running GT4s, as we see that's Bruce Perry coming out, and he's going to actually back off and let these two guys go by, which is really nice of him, not taking away the apex. But it's going to compromise Hill a little bit as he goes extremely shallow into the apex of turn 2 onto the GP circuit. Vincent Leherbier is able to streak away to 1 second.
Yeah, both Vincent and Kevin kind of went deep into the corner. I think they weren't sure where Perry was going to place his car, and kind of all parties gave each other a wide berth just to make sure that everybody comes out the other side. Perry returns in 9th place after his pit stop, and he's set to go until his next one. We're thinking probably 2 shorter stints for this last set in the GT4s and the Porsche Cup cars. We'll see if that's accurate, or if somebody maybe tries to do 2 long ones and 1 tiny one.
Yeah, that's normally what we tend to see. We're anticipating about a 5-lap stint out of those 2 higher classes. So we'll see where that shakes things out. And once again, where that will put everyone out in relation to these TCRs. I think that really in particular, Joe, could throw some very, very wild traffic problems for drivers out on track.
Speaking of all the strategy stuff, Adam, I noticed you had a chance to go back and look at Smith and Walker's pit stops and compare them. What have you found out here?
Absolutely. James Walker took tires versus Eric Smith, who did not. So that's why we're seeing a 30-second difference between Smith and Walker. So this is going to make things interesting. If Smith is thinking about doing this entire race on 1 set of tires, that's going to be a challenge, to say the least. Walker has already cut down the gap by about 1.5 seconds since coming out of the pits, and they're just now going through the second half of the Nordschleife. I say second half, but this is the twistier section takes up about a quarter of the race of the lap after the first carousel. Then we get into the Dottinger Hoe, which is another, in fact, quarter of the lap before we hit the start-finish line.
So we are now just about at the halfway point. We're getting very close to that in this race. Drivers probably feeling a little bit more weary at this stage. We saw it earlier this morning, obviously different cars, DJ, but some of the Lotus 79 drivers were talking about how they were absolutely exhausted. In one case, he wrecked, one of the drivers wrecked because of sweat, so much sweat on his eyes. So even though they're not as intense, I would think that just the mental and physical exhaustion is going to start bearing down on these drivers.
Well, Joe, I think the first part of that, you hit the nail on the head there. It is really the mental exhaustion of driving a circuit like this. You have to have so much in your brain constantly, even if you're not necessarily having to think ahead going, okay, what's the next corner? What's the next corner? You're doing that subconsciously, and that's just going to tire you out. So as we get into the second half of this race, sadly, and I don't want to jinx it, I do anticipate a couple more mistakes coming out of these drivers.
So coming over to, I think this is Herbier, and that's Bruce Perry splitting up Kevin and Vincent, who have been glued at the hip. And this is with a different class, Bruce racing in the GT4s. Now that he's caught back up to them, it's going to be a lot harder not to play a factor in this battle.
Yeah, very much so. He's trying to, make his way by here in a safe manner. But as we've seen, it's so hard to pass when you're out into the Nordschleife. And he did a really good job getting by Hill here and not trying to push the issue. But now by loitering in between a Hill and Leherbier, it's giving a little bit of a chance of Leherbier to stretch his legs ever so slightly.
Yeah, and one of the things that Bruce Perry has to be a little bit careful of is that Wayne Hutchison is only 6 seconds back. We know that Wayne tends to come online a little bit later in these races, so Bruce needs to get by Leherbier as soon as he can, because Wayne Hutchison is coming. He's already closed it by half a second since I've been talking.
Yeah, even though they are close on pace, these two classes, you can obviously still lose time. And Bruce Perry maybe being a little too polite here, trying not to interrupt the battle for the podium in the TCR class. And now maybe that he gets the car wound up coming through Kesselchen, will we see him finally start to overtake? Here we go. Now he out accelerates the kinetic car and is already going side by side.
He is little dab of the brakes there as that outside line's a little bit scarier, and he gets himself in front of Vincent Leherbier and now starts to try to pull away a little bit here. Now that could help out Vincent ever so slightly. He'll be able to pick up a little bit of a draft.
And I can report that Chris Tito had a self crash incident. He hit the outside and inside barriers and has now taken a tow, so he's going to end up at the back of this field and possibly going to have to take a spare car if he hasn't already.
I was going to say, I want to say that Yatito was involved in an incident earlier on in this event, but last time he was in, I'm not sure if he took a spare car or if he tried to take repairs, because I want to say I saw him in there for about 5 minutes. After that tow, that heads us over to Espedy with Wood. This is for 4th in the GT4s.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of a little bit of a masquerade battle because Andrew Wood, if you remember, had that spin that made him have contact with Espedy a little bit after he made contact with the outside barrier. He was able to hit the pits and get his spare car out and put fuel in it, and he only did a 5-lap stint versus Espedy's 7-lap stint. So Andrew Wood still owes us a longer stint here, which means he owes us a little bit of extra fuel. So this battle may not actually be one of the harder ones, but that's Justin Kirby tucked in behind these guys. He is 9th place in the 911s, and as they come up towards the Dottinger Hoa, it's going to be interesting to see how Kirby affects this pass on these guys and who it's going to help, whether it's going to help Wood or Espedy.
Not too far behind them, Andrew Waring will be coming up to his pit stop soon, but that's not until these cars get past the Dottinger Hoa. Kirby's going to have the power advantage, so it should be relatively easy for him to get clear, but he's going to give a tow to Espedy, which I'm sure he appreciates, and now Espedy gets a double pull with 2 cars breaking the air for him. He could pretty much pick his line, and he's going to pick the line with the Porsche, of course.
Very, very close here between these guys, DJ. Look at that. Andrew Wood actually very close between them as they go underneath the bridge. Justin Kirby actually running out of a little bit of horsepower there towards the end of that straight.
Yeah, even those 911s not absent from the problems of running into that big wall of clean air and slowing them down. But now Kirby on by, and is that Kirby coming into the pits?
It is. It is indeed. He's a little bit off strategy because he had a wreck, I think, on lap 1. So kind of to be expected, but boy, he did his job helping out Espedy there, who is now all over the rear of the 64.
Yeah, definitely these two are going to continue to battle, and Espedy probably would like to see himself by Wood as soon as he can be, because this is going to make it very difficult. It's actually probably upsetting Espedy's strategy just a little bit to be tucked in behind Wood, considering they're both a little bit off strategy from each other. So Espedy probably is hoping that he can stay on the back of Wood and maybe make another pass later in the Dottinger Hoa.
Andrew Waring's coming up to the front stretch, and Waring is not pitting. Our leader in the TCR is going to go one more time through at the end of lap 8. And we have, my goodness, I'm seeing well more than a minute gap between Waring and Travis Worling, who is in second. Or maybe that might not be entirely accurate. Here he comes now. So, okay, he's coming onto the front stretch, so it's not quite a minute's worth. Travis Worling is going to pit, though, from the TCRs.
As is Vincent Leherbier. Looks like he is going to be coming in. Kevin Hill is not. So that battle we've been following has another wrinkle added into it, and that is pit strategy.
On screen, we're still watching Espedy and Wood. This is fourth for the GT4s. Espedy ahead of Andrew now. They come on to the Nordschleife. It is BMW versus BMW.
So that pit strategy for the TCR is getting very interesting. We know that they can go a full 10 laps, but that might not be the best idea as far as making sure that you the fuel strategy is concerned. But that being said, these guys, if they started on full fuel and this is the kind of pace that they can get, that's pretty impressive. So Travis Worling, there he is in the pit lane taking tires as well as he gets ready to exit.
And the Herbier out a lot faster there, guys. He's going to jump Worling.
Ooh. Well, I mean, the good news is they have a variety of pit strategies that are open to them. So he might be trying to go for something a little bit different here on this shorter stop. Herbier returns 5th in his class, though he needs other drivers in front of him to stop in. Halleck Morton, Kevin Hill, and Andrew Waring all still haven't taken service.
All right, well, we're going to have to crack out the notepads here and try to figure out what these guys' strategies are going to end up being. This is your leader, though. Out in front of that TCR class, that is Andrew Waring.
And Kevin Hill currently in second place in TCR because he also did not pit, but he is a good 30 seconds back of Waring. As you can see, yes, about 34 seconds back of Waring. So Waring doing a great job just plugging away at the front of this field. But he has yet to pit, so yeah, I mean, it's a strategy battle at this point.
But this is going to make it all the more interesting, and everybody hopefully has someone on the box to be able to tell them what in the world is going on around them and who's doing what. Boy, a lot of curb there, but these TCR cars certainly like to munch them up.
Yeah, they do. You can get a lot of fine-tuning in the springs and the dampers of these cars. They can take a real beating coming over the curbs. That's one of the advantages of them. And it can also make for a widely different handling car when it gets low on fuel, depending on how you have that suspension built in. So very, very particular in how it goes. And some of these guys may be geared towards a little bit of a lighter fuel load, and that's where their fast times are going to be set.
Well, we kind of anticipated this, but Eric Smith, our current leader, who had a shorter pit stop than James Walker, finds the gap increasingly smaller back to P2. There you can see our leader in the number 32 car getting ready to complete another lap. And once we see the lap times, that'll really enlighten us as to what we've been witnessing between them. I'm going to wager a guess based on those numbers. It was about 5 seconds quicker. So as Eric Smith crosses the line.
There he is. Walker right in behind, only 3.5 seconds back. So I think about 4.5 seconds will be the difference. So as they both cross the line.
Ooh,
Oh,
we
Wayne
were both
Hutchinson's
wrong.
gone around. And he's got right side damage.
That's the number 17, down in 10th in his class. And once again, man, this has been Calamity Corner today, is coming into Adenauer Forest.
And Kevin Hill almost ran into him. We're going to see it right here. So coming into Adenauer Forest, he dives down and takes this left-hander and just takes it a little bit too quick. So he's a little bit too quick into the braking zone. And you can see him a little bit too quick into the braking zone, and the right-hander ends up hitting the outside wall. And then here's Hill.
Oh, quick reaction times. Lesser driver would have round up T-boning that number 17. Both of them able to continue, thankfully, so it wasn't too bad of a hit, but the car cannot be in perfect condition anymore, I imagine. And for some reason, Mark Stevenson is in the pits again.
Oh, no. Heartbreak for Stevenson, who is on his recovery drive after an earlier spin, so he hits the pit lane. Let's hope this is fuel-related. No, it's damage-related. He just took his spare car.
Oh, wow. So let me check and see if this was recent, where this happened. And this has got to be extra frustrating for him. For those that didn't tune in to last round, he was so close to a victory at New Hampshire. And at the very end, he and Steve Driscoll got into a very controversial incident that left Stevenson turned around and nowhere near a win.
Yeah, he's taking tires as well. So unfortunately for Stevenson, yet another heartbreak as he pulls out of the pits now. But he's going to be far, far back of his competitors. He's going to be almost 30 seconds behind Brian Bennett for 5th position. So unfortunately for Stevenson, who is looking so golden at the end, towards the end of the race last week, just 2 weeks of heartbreak.
Still waiting on a few of our TCRs to pit. And Boring's still going. Kevin Hill still going. See Justin Morton, Adam Halleck, Brian McGreevy, Ryan Steele, and Marcus Tracy are the names that you want to keep an eye out for popping into pit lane. Are they going to try and go a full hour and a half around here before finally stopping in for service?
I mean, Joe, as we said, they technically have the fuel to do it, but I have to think that the ability to take tires is gonna trump that. You're gonna want to come in and split this if you want to do it and try to get it down as much as possible. So we'll have to see what they do.
The other curious thing is I would think that they'd want to maybe pit when the GT4s pit, just so they're not getting mixed up with them as much. We've already seen a number of them have to try and make way as they blast right past after taking their pit stop. So,
Oh, Eric Smith has crashed.
oh, and guess where? Adenauer Forest again.
Yeah, I took it too deep once again. Oh my goodness, this just seems to be... Oh, he did hit the outside wall pretty hard. He's going to have to take his spare car because that's going to be some significant suspension damage. So here we go, streaking downhill. And this is such a beautiful part of the course. It's so easy to get yourself caught up into here. As he heads uphill once again. Oh, just such a beautiful sweeping part, but then he takes it a little bit too deep over the jump. Ends up clipping the outside curbing just a little bit, can't get the brakes down, and ends up hitting the outside barrier. So James Walker is through. Eric Smith has some toe damage. It's affecting his braking now. So he's going to fall into the clutches of Josh Chin, who he was battling with. This is a long way around. He's got another 3/4 of the lap to go.
And Joe, I can report out of GT4, Wood and Espedy. Espedy has been passed by Andrew Wood going down the Dottinger Hoa. It looked like for a second that Espedy was going to have a little bit of defense coming into the GP section of the track as Wood didn't exactly get it wound up the way he wanted to, coming on to what we traditionally think of as the pit straight. But as you can see on your screen there, Andrew Wood able to keep it ahead.
Oh, wow. Eric Smith just took a tow. Did he have another incident, or is he just not feeling confident?
It was another incident, Joe. Unfortunately, the car just bit too hard to handle. He ended up braking a little bit too hard over the bridge at the bottom half of the course. Ends up hitting the outside wall, and he's probably got a 9-10 minute tow.
Well, what was looking like at least a podium of some sort is slipping through his fingers, and Andrew Warren is finally on pit lane, waiting quite a while for the other drivers to join him on there. Here you see him taking the Audi down towards his service box.
And DJ, this looks like a team strategy because Kevin Hill, his Evolved SimSports teammate, also looks like he possibly will be coming this time.
Indeed, very well could be that kind of run from the both of them. You see him up there on the jacks, and his teammate now just coming in, and you called it right, Adam. Kevin Hill coming in as well.
So it looks like a team call for the Evolve guys. As up next, we got Justin Morton, and yes, Morton also in. I believe we have an onboard with Justin, do we not? Let's take a glance, see if he does anything to refresh himself or reset the car as we come in and just glide through, of course, our rival.
Taking a deep breath there, Justin, taking a look around, just probably just mentally resetting. You can see him keeping his hands on the wheel, just looking up, looking down, probably stretching that neck out a little bit. It's hard work out here in these cars, and I can't imagine being under the hood of VR going around the Nordschleife for 2.5 hours. But down off the jacks, just a little bit more time for fuel. And we should see him peeling away any moment now.
No changes,
Kevin
though.
Hill. And here comes Justin.
I would have thought that, especially on a front-wheel drive car, maybe he'd change up the brake bias. So there was a little bit of a switch that we could see. So maybe that was finally something to put the car how he wants it. Fresh on a stint. He'll return in 5th place, though, in his class.
But crucially out of that, Joe, he is very close behind Kevin Hill. He went into the pits a decent ways back, only 2.2 seconds. The battle for P3, I really think, is on in the TCRs. Hill's only about 3 seconds back from Warling, and Morton only about 2 seconds back from Hill.
So that's all of our major players in the TCRs having taken their stops. And that's all the first set of pit stops done for all 3 classes. So that's going to take us to a short break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the final half here of round 5 in the majors. It's the Nurburgring 2.4. Welcome back to the Nurburgring. We're watching the Nurburgring 2.4 here, round 5 in the majors. Your 3 leaders in the 3 classes are James Walker in the Porsche 911 Cups, Christian Challoner leading in the GT4 class, and then Andrew Warren leads in the TCRs. But the battle we see on screen is the GT4's P5 between Thunhorst and Espedy. Matthew recently took this one back after he unfortunately was put out of position by a wreck earlier on. So the 98 on a recovery drive yet again, honestly, as he overtakes his kinetic rival.
Yeah, and this was caused by that contact with the outside barrier that Espedy got headed on the downhill just as he crossed the river at the very first portion of the Nordschleife, so that's why we see Espedy falling back. And I was a little surprised to see Espedy not take to the pits and take his spare car, actually, but I suppose he thinks that staying on strategy is more important than being able to make that fast lap time, because we know how close he was with Wood, and he's now fallen about 3.5 seconds back. But maybe that's not enough of a deficit in his mind to take an extra pit stop.
Certainly. And it's going to be, again, McLaren versus BMW. So 2 different makes of cars, each with their own strengths, though overall, very close on pace. All 3 of the makes here balanced on iRacing. Now, down in 4th in the TCRs, we were watching Kevin Hill fighting against Leherbier for much of the time, and now we get a bit of a change of scenery. It's Justin Morton chasing him.
Indeed, Justin Morton, remember, qualified very, very well in that second row. Has had a little bit of a up and down race and fighting his way back here. Now, one of the reasons we think Leherbier may have been able to ping pong his way up through the order is he may have only taken front tires. That may be the reason why, and everybody else around him may have taken 4 tires. But now we see, as we ride on board with Morton, that is the teal car of Kevin Hill right in front of him.
Yep, so this is another one for position. And Kevin Hill going to have to hope that that Audi is not good in a straight line anymore, because he's already picking up the slipstream, and unfortunately those wishes are not going to come true, because before they even hit Antonius Beach, here he comes, Morton, and he lifts. Huh.
Interesting. Justin Morton may be thinking about some strategy here as well. Morton came in, as did Hill, on lap 9, so they went a little bit longer. Crazy theory, they may be trying to one-stop this race.
Would be a pretty crazy theory, but regardless, Justin Morton will be able to put in less fuel than Kevin Hill, so he'll be able to jump him in the pits. And if Kevin's pace isn't that much off of Justin's, and Travis Warling is only, 6 seconds ahead of these guys, I think that might give an opportunity for Justin to possibly jump Travis in the pits and get himself a podium.
Ooh, awful close down into the Yokohama S, but Morton not able to make the pass. A little puff of smoke from the car in front of them. Trent Brown, who just exited from pit lane. That's a GT4 class car, so that's not for position. But the number 9 really threatening at this stage, keeping himself close to the rear bumper of the 52.
Yeah, looking to just try to keep the pressure up here. I think at this point, Morton just either trying to force Kevin into a mistake, or, as Adam was saying, just be able to conserve a little bit more of that fuel. It's very, very close. Morton very, very strong there out of the hairpin.
Keeping himself in touch, but we haven't been able to see a successful pass yet. So as they come towards the end of the lap here at the Grand Prix circuit, does Kevin Hill try to defend, or does...
Not quite, not that much of a defense there. Oh, Mark Stevenson's had a problem in the 911s, and he's taken a tow. This was from fourth position. Mark Stevenson's night of woe continues. We're going to take a look at this, and this is actually over one of the jump sections in the track where he ends up clipping the inside barrier. So Mark Stevens in the 53 machine, here he is on screen. And so he's taking that right-hander long sweeping right-handed that takes him towards, clips the outside grass just a little bit, feels a little unsteady, then clips the inside curb and hits the outside wall so hard. That might be Mark Stevenson's day over, DJ.
Yeah, it very well might, and just what you've seen out of these drivers can happen if you get a little bit cockeyed coming through those corners, just a hair outside. It can come back to bite you. Lots of damage to that Forge car.
We're going to take this up to Jason Wallet and Eric Smith. This is Eric Smith on his recovery drive after his incident, tucked in behind Wallet. Now, both of these guys are behind Christian Chauner by almost a minute. So Eric Smith on his recovery drive, he's got Jason Wallet to pass, and even though Wallet is quite a bit slower than Smith on race pace, it's still really hard to effect a pass on somebody in your class here at the Nordschleife, DJ.
Well, and we've seen it, Adam, even if it's not in class, if you're going on a multi-class pass, it's so difficult when you get out into these long portions of the track. There's just not enough heavy braking. It's all these super fast sweepers left, right, and center that can catch you out. So very, very hard. You don't want to have to say to wait until the Dodingerhoa, but sometimes that's the only way you can get it done.
Ooh, look at this. Jason Walt going a little bit wide. Eric Smith is going to go by, and Walt's going to let him. So a nice little courtesy move there from Wallet, realizing that he probably was feeling the pressure from Smith. And sometimes as a driver, it's the best thing you can do to just let a faster driver go by instead of falling into the temptation of pushing too hard behind another driver. And now Walt's going to get a chance to ride in the draft of Smith down the Dodingerhoa and save some fuel.
Exactly. It's a win-win. And to that point, yes, it is demoralizing to let another driver get on by you, but I can tell you that it is an absolute godsend if you know they're faster, and it just lets you sort of reset and breathe, and you never know, that driver ahead of you may make a mistake down the line.
And so as Wallet does that fuel saving, we've got Lyndon Swaby and Liam Quinn who are battling for P2 in the GT4s. Lyndon Swaby actually takes a little bit too wide of a line going out of the Dodingerhoa, giving Liam Quinn an advantage even as soon as they hit the front straightaway. Now let's see whether or not Liam Quinn just decides to do some fuel saving here, whether he goes for the pass. Comes up behind, and here he goes. He pokes his nose out and hits that big wall of air. Let's see whether or not Liam can do it the long way around as they go into the bridge.
Well, remember, these guys are teammates, so there may be a little bit of communication in between the two, but it looks like Quinn's at least going to have a little bit ahead. Indeed, cuts back across over his teammate there, and that is going to be a pass to move Liam Quinn up into that second place.
Great move from him for sure. Lyndon Swaby falling back into third position. He'll just ride behind Liam Quinn, try and do some fuel saving himself. And Matthew Thunhorst on his recovery drive is tucked up behind Andrew Wood in fifth position in the GT4s. Andrew Wood just ahead of him, and they're just starting to go on the Dodingerhoa. So I'm not sure whether Thunhorst is close enough behind Wood for us to see a similar thing happen here, DJ.
Well, I'll tell you what, Andrew Wood is worried that he might be. You just saw that massive drift across the track from the 64. Very clearly worried about the slipstream. The McLaren now of Matthew Thunhorst closing. I think you're right, Adam. Doesn't exactly have the speed to do it. You see a little bit of a poke to the outside there. Maybe just trying to scare him a little bit. They're going to go into those corners that lead us back onto the GP circuit right now. Thunhorst not making a move yet, but he may be close enough to effect a pass coming down through that Grand Prix section.
Yeah, and here he comes with a nice run off of the final corner into the Grand Prix section. Look how close he is. Is he going to stick his nose out? He's going to actually, look at that. That's going to be a nice block move, a nice move to the inside from Wood. Thunhorst's going to try and go around the long way here at the hairpin.
It's going to be tricky, but remember, without that arena section, it's a little bit shorter of a cutback. Thunhorst backs off, though, doesn't want to push it too hard, lining himself up for a better exit there out of the Yokohama S, and look at that closing speed, able to really keep up that gap up to Andrew Wood. They now go down into that first left-right complex, leading down into the Dunlop hairpin. You can see Wood very defensive, Thunhorst very aggressive.
Absolutely, but Thunhorst just can't get the speed off of the corner the same way that the Bimmer can, so this puts him back at a disadvantage. Now, the GP course is one of the better places to try and effect a pass if you're not going to do it on the Dodingerhoa, but you have to remember, these cars are set up to battle on the Nordschleife, so they're not set up to tackle the GP course in the same effective way, and Andrew Wood, as you can see, is starting to pull away.
Very much is. You're seeing just how tricky it is, but look at how much of the curb there Thunhorst is taking. Very, very aggressive lines coming through the Schumacher S. Now winding it back into this last set of chicanes before we break from the GP circuit and get it back around. And again, that BMW good off the line.
I can report that Austin Espedy has come into the pits for that damage that he took just as we are going to break. So unfortunately for him, he's now in the pits and out. So he has taken his spare car and is now going to get back out on track. Actually, I don't believe he's taking his spare car. I still see some damage on the left side.
Yeah, I do too. And I do have to say, Adam, I think he will be able to finish the lap on one more stop with the rest of the leaders, but it's certainly going to throw him off cycle.
So that battle that we were watching between Thunhorst and Wood, still very good as they now enter the Nordschleife for the first time on this lap. Lap 12 here out of a predicted 16, 17, depending on how fast Walker can go here. But Thunhorst is going to be pretty stuck up behind Wood, even though he is quite a bit quicker through the turns.
Yeah, and that is one of the big problems of racing on the Nordschleife. Like we talked about a little bit earlier, this was not a track designed with modern cars in mind. It is so narrow, it is so difficult. It is a driver's delight to hot lap, but it is a driver's nightmare to try to get a pass on this long stretch through the Eifel Woods.
And here we come up towards the jump. Let's see whether or not both of these cars take it well. Wow, look at that. It's so awesome to watch these cars jump over that little crest right there. One of the fastest sections on the course. It looks like that BMW starting to streak away with that pace advantage. But look at this, DJ. We have a pass possibly going on for P4 once again. Kevin Hill and Justin Morton still having their little battle. And Justin Morton in the TCRs, once again, just sticking it behind, giving a little bit of a bump draft to Kevin Hill and trying to get a little bit of fuel saving done.
I love this from Justin Morton, just absolutely great. But Pokes has noticed the outside. Hill goes a little bit defensive there. I thought for a second that may have been a pass. Don't know if that was a little bit of mind games, but either way, we stay in line.
So as they now return to that Grand Prix course, Kevin Hill doing everything he can to hold back Justin Morton. For all of his fighting, I think that Kevin Hill is himself going to have a workout by the end of the day. Couldn't get away from Leherbier. Now he can't get away from Morton, but no attempt. Surprisingly, I thought for sure that Justin would try and attack there into the Yokohama S.
No, very much so. And Morton, they're a little bit slower off the line. That may be slightly deliberate, just wanting to stay behind at this point. There you see Hill, and kind of what we talked about, just how early these TCRs do have to brake. Make sure you get them wound up in a straight line, as they do not like to be turning in a corner.
I think we have some more of our Porsche Cup cars pitting now. Josh Chin hits the lane at the end, or at the start of lap 13, rather. And I see Trent Brown from the GT4s also pitting. So is this starting to kick off the last stint for some of our leaders? And will this give Josh Chin anything over James Walker, who seems to have had the measure of the rest of the field in that class?
Important to note, Josh Chin has a little bit of front end damage on that machine, so this could also be a factor playing into it. Now he's taking fuel right now, which means no other work can be done on the car, and he's going to be going as soon as he gets that fuel done. So going to be fascinating to see how this works. So there he goes, takes very little bit of fuel, comes out with a 48.9 second time on the lane. That's our fastest pit stop for those 911s right now.
Well, and we've only got 40 minutes left to go.
Oh, Wayne Hutchinson's had a wreck before.
Oh, no.
In the turn going onto the Nordschleife.
Did he have a little bit of help here?
Yes, he did. This was from Vincent Leherbier. Actually, this seems as a very weird wreck.
So, yeah, because he's touching him long before, but he doesn't shove him. This is very strange.
Joe, I think Wayne Hutchinson was looking in his mirrors and completely missed the turn.
Let's watch this. And apparently we had a problem with Thunhorst. We'll go to that after. Yeah, he blinks his lights at him. I mean, well, we always complain about that being, trying to distract a driver, and it looks like it really did distract a driver.
Yeah, and Thunhorst happens about a minute ago. This was a gigantic wreck. He ends up actually sticking it into the wall. Here it is. and he just ends up wedging it into that Armco barrier and can't escape.
He glitched into the wall, which means he pretty much has to take a tow. And after having multiple issues, he's decided he's had enough. So James Walker, who is still up at the front, is starting to have to overtake slower cars.
Yeah, he just made his way past Wayne Hutchison in the 9th place in the GT4s and that battle for 4th place in the TCRs, DJ, between Kevin Hill and Justin Morton.
Yeah, it was a very, very hairy couple of moments there for all 4 drivers as they were just sort of playing leapfrog with each other, trying to get around the circuit, but everybody able to get through nice and cleanly. And now this battle between Hill and Morton can go back to what it was.
Let's see. Now, this is coming up to Oudenauer Forest, and this is where we've seen by far the most incidents in this race so far. All 3 of them successfully navigating it this time. They've got to do so for about 4 or 5 more laps, though. Off the corner, Justin Morton, who seems to be playing a little bit of a strategy game here, riding behind the 52. At what point does he decide that it's time to go? Or is this legitimately as fast as we can see the 9 run?
I think Justin's got some more pace, but you have to remember that they're both riding behind a damaged Wayne Hutchison. He's got that right front damage from that incident we just saw. So I'm not sure how fast Wayne's going to be able to go through here, and that might hold up Hill and Morton. Now, they both have lost significant time to Travis Worling up ahead, so this battle really is for that 4th position, barring any fuel saving that Justin Morton can get done. Oh, Christian Challoner's into the pits.
That's the leader in our GT4s. He's already finished his stop. That should do him for the end of the race. Even with that pit stop, yeah, Liam Quinn only just entering now, who, wow, what a run has this been from Quinn. Now, will this pit stop change the order, though? Will it shuffle things up? Is this legitimately 2nd place for Liam Quinn?
Well, we're about to find out, because here's Lennon Swaby pulling in behind him, only 3 seconds behind when they hit the line. So if Swaby's done any fuel saving to Quinn, we're about to get it all sorted out right now. Now remember, Andrew Wood is a good minute behind these guys, and I don't think they're going to spend a minute in the pits.
Well, it was about a minute and some change, I think 1:17, that Swaby was behind Challoner, and he made it out before Quinn got to his stall or even entered the pits. So I disagree. I think they might actually be out before Wood gets there. And Wood is entering just now. Looks like we're waiting for things to finish for these two. Indeed, they're on their way. Both the Kinetic drivers exit as they entered. Wood just now getting close to finding his stall.
Yeah, and about 3 seconds still between Quinn and Swaby. I think Quinn had a little bit of a better pit stop than Swaby, so Wood hits his stall and is able to park it well. Looks like Adam Halleck has had possibly an issue. Never mind, there was a connection issue that he was having. So no need to go to that.
Seems like a lot of the front runners in the GT4s employing the same strategy, but really not a whole lot going on behind them, unfortunately, in that class. Really, the big action is between Hill and Morton. They just exited the carousel, and Morton is a lot closer than we've seen him for quite some time. He was nearly pushing Hill through the carousel section.
Yeah, Joe, Kevin Hill looked very defensive through that carousel. I think he was very scared that that was going to be where Morton was going to try to chuck it in. And Morton just said, you want to do that? That's perfectly fine. Laid back, got a better apex through the corner and carried some speed. Falls back a little bit right here through that Wibberman section, but now is going to be the point when I think he will start to turn this on ever so slightly. If he wants to make the move, he's got it, I think.
It's looked like he's had it for a long time now, just hasn't acted upon it. Down through YouTube corner. And as they once again head back uphill for a slight crest into the ice curve, going to see them get some air over Flansgarden. Coming up here, a very fast entry into a double apex right-hander, but it's towards the end of the lap at this stage. Will we see these two be able to keep it going all the way to the end, or did either of them maybe cut it a little too close on fuel? Is that what is keeping the number 9 behind, that he's just trying to save that little bit behind the 52? So far, so good. Neither of them having issues through Flansgard and now through the Beloff S's up to Swallowtail.
Well, Joe, it may be the case that Morton is a little bit lighter on fuel, and that's why he's been stuck behind. Now, we talked about there can be some discrepancies in the refueling of the TCRs, but Morton was about 6 seconds faster in that last round of pit stops, so he may be having to take into account a little bit of fuel saving.
And Christian Chandler just made it past Jason Wallet, who continues to fall back. Now, fortunately for him, he's not last in his class anymore. We have Mark Stevenson and Chris Yatito out, both of them, and Justin Kirby, who's recovering himself. Just Wallet not having a great day on track right now, and Christian Chandler, an absolute alien. I mean, he's a good minute 20 seconds over second place Liam Quinn right now.
Love seeing this track and all the weaving corners through Defense Valley there. There's just no room for mistakes. And Christian Chandler, from what we've witnessed so far, hasn't really made a whole lot of them. He's still got well over a minute back to Liam Quinn. Has to survive another half an hour to claim his 3rd victory of the season. We're waiting on James Walker to make his final pit stop, but he went past for another lap, so he'll continue to have that huge gap over Josh Chin. Jeff Schmeier, who's running in 3rd, doing himself a mighty fine job. The only other driver that is pitted in that class that I'm seeing is Daniel Johnson, who sits 6th there right now.
Yeah, so the 911 class just doing a good job hanging on to their positions right now. I think the only person who's really at threat at the moment is Jeff Schmeier in 3rd. Brian Bennett only 4.5 seconds behind him. So the 911's doing a great job. And here is Jeff Schmeier in the 3rd position, and 4 seconds back, you can just see him back there. That was Brian Bennett.
Got a little bit of lap traffic behind them.
Oh, and Eric Smith's had another wreck, Joe.
Oh no. It looks like he's got the car going. This was a slow one. This was out of the carousel. Look at him, watch him light him up here.
Yeah, it gets on that outside curb, it unsettles the car, and then just spears it straight into the barrier. Now, hopefully that won't be too much damage for him, but just insult to injury at this point in the race.
Yeah, considering he was looking at a top 3 in his class.
Oh. And as I was saying, Brian Bennett was challenging Jeff Schmeier. Brian Bennett comes into the pits, so I stand corrected.
but Schmeier does not. And as we've seen, it seems like one of the bigger differences could be pit stops and pit strategy. So maybe this is Brian doing what Jeff does not in an attempt to get himself track position after they cycle through.
We'll have to see how that plays out for him. Brian Bennett doing fuel only, I believe. So we'll see how this... I mean, obviously the tires would come after the fuel, so... But my guess is that towards the end of this race, I mean, we only have a couple of laps left, and look at that. Such a short stop. 40 seconds on the lane, and he's back out. That is even 8 seconds faster than Joshua Chin's time on the lane.
Yeah.
So a very quick stop for Brian.
That might actually allow him to jump Schmeier in the end. And I do have to say, I really like these Sector 5 paint schemes on the Porsche 911 Cup. They look snazzy. They feel right.
Oh, and Eric Smith has taken a tow, Joe. Yet another incident, and he's now out of the race.
Oh, poor Eric. Well, we've said it many a times that the ring is unforgiving. It is a supreme test for the drivers. Not everybody passes it, unfortunately. Down to the last half hour of this race. We got a ways to go before we see some of our front runners in the fastest class get back around for a pit stop. Curious when we're going to be seeing some of our drivers who are running in the slower classes get around for their stops. Looks like we're going to turn the cameras, though, on a driver that we haven't shown a whole lot. And, well, that's because there's just not much happening around him. DJ, Andrew Warren's probably happy to have the cameras away from him.
I was gonna say, he has just driven a very, very good race here. He has got about a full second faster on his fastest lap than any other driver on circuit, and consistently on the last couple of laps has been about 3 seconds faster than his closest competition of Vincent Laherbier. So very, very smooth here from Warren. You can see having some faster traffic come up behind him, but he has just kept his nose clean and driven a good race in this TCR.
And let's not forget that this is a sort of, well, go ahead.
Joe Lyndon Swaby has just had a massive wreck. And he's now, I mean, that car is completely toast. This is one of the hardest wrecks we've seen all day.
Took a little curb there. Let's see.
Ooh, he looks unsettled already. Takes the inside curve there and just a little bit too hot going into that sector.
Oh, whoa.
And this is what can happen in the Nordschleife, and it happens a couple of corners back. You can see he's unsettled going over that crest. Gets a little bit too close here, clips the inside curb, clips the outside curb, and the car's just unsettled underneath him. That is a hard hit.
And the Beloff S's is not a place where you want to mess around. We see why. So, unfortunately, had to take a tow, and that puts him well down the order, if he can even manage to finish the rest of this race. James Walker, let's see, this looks like Style Strecka. I think that he is heading through currently, yeah, up and into the carousel one more time with a handy gap of about 1:15 over Josh Chin. That will shrink down once he comes in for his final stop. He's on lap 14, so should have to come in pretty soon, because I think he can only get, let's see, we said about 7 laps max on the first one. So, yeah, I'm expecting him in at the end of this one, I would think.
I would expect so as well for Walker. And I would also not be surprised if Walker and Challoner put bets on who can finish furthest ahead of their next competitor. But it'll be interesting to see what that stat ends up being at the end of this race. But with Walker taking the pit stop, I believe Chin's probably taken his last, so that gap will close down.
We talked about drivers that have unfortunately taken tows. There are actually a number of retirees today. Chris Yatito is out. Mark Stevenson is a DNF today. Travis Henderson. Trent Brown has been on pit lane for some time, about 14 minutes, so I'm not sure if he's going to be able to return. Matthew Thunhorst is gone for the day. Swaby, unfortunately, taking extensive repairs. Eric Smith, we know, is officially gone as well. So we're down to about 28 cars or so left running as we check in on the battle for fourth.
Yeah, and DJ, that is a lot of our front-running points contenders that are also out right now, which is definitely something that the teams need to be a little bit concerned about.
Exactly. You know, last time out, we were talking about that powerhouse of Forge up front. Not exactly the case here today. So definitely going to throw a wrench into both the drivers and teams championships. But as we focus in on this battle for P4 with Hill and Morton yet again, it's the same story, different lap. Justin Morton just looked absolutely stellar coming through the carousel. Kevin Hill a little bit squiggly. And now as they make their way through the latter parts of the Nordschleife, Hill able to pull out a little bit more of a gap once again. So now Morton chasing in, trying to see what he can do, and if he decides to make the pass this time going through the Doninger Hocha.
And Joe, Brian Bennett has hit the outside wall in P4 of the 911s, so this is going to put him even further out of touch with Jeff Schmeier. Brian Bennett, there you see that left side damage for him as he's making his way around Brian Barnes. Let's see whether or not we can catch this. Yeah, it's going to be coming up here as they start to take the left-hander.
Yeah, I think into Style Strecka. Now, there is quite a bit of speed that you're carrying up to this corner. You can see through the moot curve. And he's coming up on some traffic, which might have unsighted him a little bit. He's going to get on the binders here. Car jinks to the left and goes hard back to the right, but the car doesn't go right. just grazes the Armco, he may have gotten away with it. He's still in fourth. Didn't lose a spot to Daniel Johnson, who's actually 2 minutes behind him currently. There's a huge distance back. Now he's able to overtake that TCR car. Having a bit of trouble doing it, though. Now he's through. A driver that I want to give mention to that we haven't talked about in terms of championship. We didn't see him on the top 5, but he's just outside of it. Josh Chin sits 6th in the points. He's going to take a 2nd place in his class today. I think that the 93 is going to find this a handy little day.
Absolutely. I think Josh Chin, he's been very strong in rounds past, and I know we talk about him in other series here in the GSRC, but it's fantastic to see him in such a good position here. Now he just has to stay clean and consistent. He's got a 26-second gap over Jeff Schmeier in 3rd behind him, so he doesn't have to worry about the gap behind. He's not really in a position to challenge Walker up ahead of him, and Josh Chin catching up to that battle for 4th position in the TCRs between Morton and Hill. Morton did not take the opportunity to pass this last time behind the Dottinger Hoa yet again.
And by the way, with that pit stop for Walker, the gap between himself and Chin is still a whopping 41 seconds.
And that is something I have had the chance to compete against Joshua Chin once or twice, and I can tell you, I saw him very briefly at the start, and then he was gone. An absolutely amazing driver all the way around there. He gets past that battle, and yeah, guys, as you said, Justin Morton choosing once again to just tuck up behind Hill in the draft going down the Dottinger Hoa. It looked like he may have tried to make a little poke to the outside going through Tiergarten, but Hill, a little bit wise to it, I think covered him off. So this may be an instance where Morton is trying to set up a last lap pass going down that long straightaway.
He's certainly given it plenty of time. Maybe he doesn't feel confident that he can pull away from Hill. And maybe that's why he's waiting so long to try and make this overtake, because obviously Hill can potentially use the same thing right back on him, and he could be waiting until the very last moment so that there is no fight back. By the way, Jeff Schmeier just pitted. He's now ready to go to the end, but that extends his gap to over a minute behind Josh Chin. Huge swaths of time separating our podium in the fastest class.
And you know what, talking about Morton and Hill, I mean, DJ, the only realistic reason I could see why Morton would stay behind Hill at this point is because of fuel. Because I think that Morton has got a couple of seconds a lap over Hill just on raw pace, looking at the attitude of the cars as they go through this track. So I'm just, if Morton has the fuel to get by, I'm just curious as to why he's still stuck in behind him, because I think that Hill's actually been holding him up, and they have 7 seconds up to Travis Worling up ahead, and I think Morton could have closed that gap in the amount of laps that we've seen him stuck behind Hill.
I fully agree with you there, Adam. The way he's been driving going down the Dottinger Hoa, it's very much looking like a fuel run. It's a little bit like the way you pull up behind a semi, and I know you're not supposed to, but pull up behind a semi and try to save some fuel when you're going down the interstate. Very, very close, right up behind, just trying to let that car pull him as much as possible. So I think it is a mega eco thought for Justin Morton here.
Wow. And I'm amazed that Hill has been able to drive as smoothly as he has with that car on his bumper for a good chunk of the race at this stage. I know I tend to get a little bit nervous when someone just looks like they're so easily closing behind like that, but he's handling it well as they come down to Ehrenberg one more time.
And just look at that, the way Morton is taking that corner, swinging it out a little bit wider. It's a brilliant attacking move of just trying to fill Hill's mirror as much as possible and maybe get him off the line. I've got to think at this point, we're looking at maybe 2 or 3 laps to go here as we get down under 20 minutes for Justin Morton. I got to think it's time to put the bit between his teeth. I've got to think at this point he's been hanging up behind in enough fuel. He's ready to go.
On board with him as he watches through his VR. can only imagine what it's like experiencing this place, and that is, this is not a track that I've driven with VR before. Blinking a little bit here and there, not too much of a concern since I don't think we've really seen it at all much this race.
Yeah, that'll happen a couple times. If you start to hit the replay spooling limit, you'll blink just a tiny bit depending on your system. And so Justin Morton, I believe, just hitting that moment where it switches over to the hard drive for the saving of the replay. But Justin Morton still very strong, and still, I mean, like you said, Joe, driving this thing in VR has got to be a complete sweat fest. I would love to see the red ring around his face when he pulls that headset off tonight, because it's gonna, I mean, this is an exhausting race, even with when you're doing it on monitors.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, and I guess spoilers for anybody who is looking to watch the Lotus 79 race from earlier. One of the leaders actually wrecked out from the lead because sweat was getting in his eyes in his VR set, and it was too painful, and he just made a mistake. He did bring it home second, but that tells you you're not exaggerating. It really is a concern around this track.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's almost this track or many tracks on the iRacing service, you know, obviously you don't want to crank your force feedback up too high, but this can be a very physical sport for these guys. You really do have to manhandle these cars, especially in some of these heavier GT cars like the TCR. It's not exactly the fine-tuned steering like you'd see in a open wheeler. Got to do a little bit of manhandling, and it can really exhaust you.
Been holding on this for a while because this is frankly our only battle left on the track. Everybody else is pretty far apart, and we've just about finished. In fact, I think we have finished with our pit stops for everybody at this stage. Our leader currently working middle of lap 15, I'm seeing, and 17 minutes left to go. Yeah, just not much time left for anything to erupt unless we get a mistake from a car ahead. As I say that, I think Zach Brown just took a pit stop, fourth from the GT4s.
Yes, he did. So Zach Brown in the pits. Andrew Wood, just having taken his pit stop, is pulling up as well. So here's Zach on screen right now as he takes his final pit stop, 12.4 seconds. Just a little splash for those last couple laps around this track. And I believe James Walker's about a minute 18 behind him, and at if they're lapping around 8:55 to James Walker's 8:34, I think he's going to have to go the extra lap. So Walker's not going to pass him. Austin Espedy getting by in the pit cycle. So Zach Brown's got a battle on his hands to finish out this race.
And I hope Zach's mom is watching, because look at that bed. Look at how nicely made that bed is in the background. Well, a pat on the back for the 28 car.
I think my former teammate Riley Thompson could learn a thing or two from that.
Always have to get a jab in on him, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, down into the Dunlap hairpin, Brown with 2.3 seconds to make up on Espedy. Not impossible, but really this next lap will probably tell the tale, and if he's got the pace.
Yeah, we'll see if he's got the pace in order to keep that position. And just a great race from everybody. Actually, I've been really pleasantly surprised with the amount of respect I've seen in this split. We didn't have a lot of first lap incidents where drivers were just taking too many risks. That has, quite frankly, been a departure from the other regions that we've been able to see. There were a lot of first lap incidents that ended up taking out a decent portion of the field, but these drivers in Americas look like they're they watched those other regions, took notes, and many of them are focused on getting to the end. And the incidents that we have seen have mostly been, in fact, almost entirely been single car incidents, except for that one little unfocused moment from Vincent Herbier earlier on. But for the most part, it's just been the attrition of the track as opposed to the attrition of the battling cars.
Wonder if we could give some love to the number 37.
Oh, not right now, because Justin Morton is pulled out from behind Kevin Hill, and he's actually going to go for the pass. This has been long in coming, DJ.
It has indeed. It did the same pull-up move that he's done for a long time. He is now fully clear of Hill. Hill starts to drift over to the right of the track. Morton goes to cover him off as they make their way through Tiergarten and down through these last sweepers. Morton ahead of Hill. He's just got to really wind it up before they get onto the GP circuit, and he has got it.
Well, we wondered when he would pull the trigger, and now he's done it. Now he's got that 4th spot. Can he pull away? This isn't really a part of the track where I anticipate the slipstream giving him a whole lot. Could this have been strategic and the placement of the overtake? And not close enough for the attack down into the Yokohama S, but a little wide at the first apex there for Justin Morton. He's got to do better than that if he wants to break away from the 52.
Yeah, DJ, how hard is it to, having been spent half the race behind somebody, to now be in front of them and to be looking at your braking points at very different places now?
I am not surprised that he had a little bit of a bobble going into that. You know, when you're stuck behind somebody like that, you really do have to do so much adjustment on your braking points. You've got to brake so much earlier. You forget how much speed you can carry through a corner when you don't have to worry about that car in front of you. But now it looks like Justin's got it all back together under him, goes down through the Dunlop curve and back up on to the Schumacher S here as he winds it on through, already pulling a gap here of about a half a second over Kevin Hill. It's really going to be telling the guys when they get into the Nordschleife to see if Justin can really pull away.
Yeah, because that half second is not going to be enough. That'll certainly bring Hill back up to him in the slipstream. The next really long straight that they've got, probably going to be from High Oaks up to the Swedish Cross. Don't know if it's completely flat out, but it is all incredibly quick through there. So Morton coming now to the final chicane, and that number 9 tries to sail it through there as hard as possible, still looking to try and break from the 52. Doesn't really do it there. Onto the Nordschleife, and now the test begins.
Exactly. Kevin Hill taking a little bit of a wider line there, doing the same thing that Justin Morton was doing to him a couple of laps ago. So here it is, full pedal to the metal. The gap is steady, holding steady at about a half a second.
Guys, I can report that Zachary Brown in that 5th position, that guy who we just saw took out the pit stop in the GT4 BMW Forge racing machine, has hit the outside wall yet again. So unfortunately, he's got some damage he's going to be carrying for these final 2 laps of this race.
Yeah, I can see the gap has grown between himself and Espedy, but the gap not growing between Morton and Hill, still stuck at about 5 to 6 tenths of a second, and there is High Oaks. Now, Hill will have the slipstream feeding him closer into the rear bumper of the 9. Does he try and take it right back if he gets a good enough of a run, or does he wait behind?
I've got to think you do not want to take too much of a risk here. You've got a top 5 if you're Kevin Hill. You want to fight Justin Morton, but do not throw it all away on a big pass like this. See if you can keep it nice and close going through the Nordschleife, and maybe do the same thing that Morton did to you. Just get a good draft going down the Dardinger Hole.
He gained on him, but didn't get close enough to try and pass. And don't forget, this is an important one for 2 of these teams, Evolve and Forge, still fighting for the championship in the teams race. So I think this goes beyond just a simple top 5 finish. I have to imagine each wants to beat the other to help their fellow teammates.
Absolutely, Justin Morton taking up the Forge flag this season. Doing a great job. He's proven to be an asset, especially on the short ovals like we saw at New Hampshire. And here, Kevin Hill is just hanging right with him. You know, this might not be over. Now, according to the lap prediction software that Justin may be running, this may be considered his last lap, but I think we're probably going to get another one because, yes, we are, because James Walker will be able to complete this lap ahead of these guys and start the next one before we get the white flag. So this is going to be very tough for Justin to stay ahead of Kevin if he can't pull the gap a little bit further, but he's starting to inch away, DJ.
Yeah, ever so slightly, but the gap still stubbornly now inching its way back, under braking to about that 0.5 of a second mark. They make their way up through that double right-handed section there and start to come back down the hill. Now, where I think this is going to be the real tell here, guys, I've been watching this on a couple of laps. It was going through the carousel. That is where Justin just absolutely started to pull away. And indeed, right there, going through Vershythen, that already pulled a gap of 0.3 of a second up to 0.4 of a second. So on those very, very long corners, almost like the hairpins, we'd like to think of them here on the Nordschleife, Justin's got a big advantage.
Going to be white flag next time by the way, for James Walker. And I believe for these drivers too, as they're not going to be lapped by him. Also an update on Zach Brown. He's definitely losing time on Espedy. It's all the way up to 10 seconds, so that car is certainly limping. The good news is he's got about a minute back to Nick Kuhn, so he could probably stay out on track and not have to come in and take repairs.
And Joe, another report, Lyndon Swaby from 6th position ended up hitting the outside wall. His car was crabbing too much, and he's taken it to the pits. He has retired the car, so Lyndon Swaby out of this battle as well. So many of our top points finishers in rounds past wrecking out of this race.
Looks like we've got Brian Bennett and Justin Kirby taking stops. Justin just finished, and Bennett is just finishing his up. As we were watching Hill and Morton, I did notice once they came into Kesselchen, it looked like Morton was the farthest away he had been, but the slipstream once again brought back, and there we see them on screen right now. The 52 just brought it right back down with that huge draft that these cars are punching in the air.
Most certainly. Now let's see how they go through the carousel here. This is where I've talked Justin's been so strong in the past. What does that gap grow out to as they start to exit the corner? I've got 0.6 of a second up to 8.5 of a second. So that is good for Justin. He's now going to want to try to pull this out a little bit more. His saving grace here may be the small carousel before we get onto the Donninger-Hoa. We'll have to see. He's still got a couple of more corners to get through before he gets to that point.
It's up to 0.9 now. This is perhaps the most technical portion of the track, especially the longest one between the long straights. Beloff S and the Donninger-Hoa, probably the next real section where they're going to be flat to the floor for quite some time. And it looks to me like Hill is pushing as hard as he can. He's getting right up to the edge of the track.
Yeah, DJ, I think that if Morton is able to pull out a 1.2 second gap on Hill by the time they hit the Donninger-Hoa, I think he's going to be able to make it so that Kevin Hill would have to make a real risky move on the brakes into the GP section in order to try and effect a pass. But Hill really fighting to stay there.
He is, but there is one problem coming up behind that could be a real interesting wrinkle into this, and that is the third place 911 Cup of Jeff Schmeier, who is coming up behind both of these guys.
White flag just flew for James Walker. He begins the end of this race. There you see him on screen now. And Schmeier doesn't have anybody to fight, though. In fact, he's more than a minute away from anybody else within his class. So from what I know of Jeff, I don't think he's going to try and interrupt this.
I think the best thing Jeff can do is to wait until the Donninger-Hoa and try and make a pass there, but that actually might help Kevin Hill, because even if Justin Morton is further ahead, and he's not, Justin only 0.7 of a second, Schmeier getting past Kevin Hill may give Hill the draft he needs to battle Morton as they go under the bridge.
Exactly. It's a good way to fight against that big wall of clean air that we've seen bite out. But here comes Schmeier, just as you said, Adam. He moves his way to the right, and it looks like Hill is going to stay tucked up behind Morton, though.
I could have sworn. I would have thought, and see, Morton's a lot more savvy there. He tries to grab whatever he can off of that Porsche Cup. Kevin Hill gets it back down to about 0.4 of a second, drifting across the track just to lengthen the curve here for Justin Morton as he comes up to Antonius Beach, drops back down to the apex there, and now right on top of him. Kevin Hill is going to run out of racetrack. I don't think he's going to be able to make the pass.
One more lap then, DJ.
One more lap indeed, boys. We could see a drag race to the finish here.
And Justin Morton clobbered the curb pretty hard. This is going to give an opportunity to Kevin Hill, who's going to look to the inside. Here comes the move. Is this going to put Justin Morton behind for the final lap of this race?
Right now it's looking that way, but he'll have the whole lap to try and effect a pass right back as they come into the braking for the Yokohama S. Little kink onto the entry, very shallow into the corner for Kevin Hill. Will this compromise him? Cutting back underneath. Here comes Justin Morton. Tries to get the launch, doesn't quite have it.
Very heads up from him, though, to try to be able to put his car exactly where it needed to be in order to maximize the speed through that corner. Now, right up behind Kevin Hill, again, going a little bit wide, trying to maximize speed as much as he can. Really doing anything here, but I've got to say, I almost prefer to be in this position if I'm Justin Morton. I've seen the speed I can carry. I know I've got the speed down the Duttinger Hoa. This may be where he wants to be right now, actually.
By the way, you might be saying the same thing I am. Brian Bennett, sadly, with his damage that he had when he came in and pit, has not been able to return to the track, so he might be our latest DNF.
I was talking about Daniel B. Johnson, who spun it coming up towards the last half of, actually coming up towards the Dottinger Hoa. Christian Challoner now only a second and a half behind him, getting ready to start his white flag lap. Believe it or not, Andrew Warwick has already started his white flag lap and is just now entering the Nordschleife. So there is Andrew just taking the first 4 or 5 corners of the Nordschleife, completely in a league of his own right now, 48 seconds ahead of Vincent Laherbier in second.
And again, for Andrew, getting max points here for his Evolve car is going to help him a lot against the likes of Thunhorst and Challoner, at least keep him even with Challoner and not lose too much more. But Thunhorst, who's had a bad day to say the least, is unfortunately might not be in second place at the end of this. On board with Christian Challoner coming along the Dottinger Hoa. Daniel Johnson just in front of him, and this is actually for overall position. Christian is within the top 5 overall, despite being in the second fastest class.
Look at the speed of that BMW GT4 on the straightaways. Absolutely massive, tucked in behind that 911. But he just backs it off because he knows the 911 is going to be faster around the rest of the track. This is Daniel B. Johnson in the 4th position overall. But Christian, look how calm and collected he is as he crosses the line for his white flag lap.
One more to go for Christian to be able to add to that win tally. So where is James right now? Looks like he's about halfway through the lap, actually. So he's closing in on the last couple minutes. In fact, the clock only has 1 minute and 50 seconds left, but final lap ends when that clock ends. So as he is, he's coming up Kesselchen, this looks like, towards the Moot Curve.
And just a class act for Walker right now. I mean, just such a great drive from him. And he can just mosey it on home with 47 seconds to get there. But I think we should head back to Kevin Hill and Justin Morton, DJ, because Justin is putting some serious pressure on Kevin at this thing.
I don't know if there's a word more important, bigger than serious, but you are 100% right, because Morton is all over the back of the number 52 of Kevin Hill right now. There you see on board Justin not showing an inch of worry on his face there of what we can see of it. Lining up behind, lost a little bit of time there as they make their way up around the high point of the track, starting to go back down the hill again here. Little bit of a bobble there, but he's still keeping this very close.
One little mistake is all it's going to take from Hill, and Morton will go right back past again. But does he need that mistake, or is he going to be able to use the slipstream to try and attack? Here we ride on board with him, chattering away, probably talking to his teammates a little bit.
Starting to fall back a little bit, DJ. I think the tires, is it maybe fuel related? The tires look pretty spent on both of these guys, but Justin doesn't seem to be picking it up as quickly coming out of the corners as Kevin.
No, he doesn't. I can't imagine it would be fuel related with just how long he was behind Kevin. Maybe, you know what it may be, honestly, Adam, thinking about it, it may be that he's trying to cool the tires here in this specific section of the track so he can get very, very aggressive when they get to the last couple of corners.
Well, those are going to come sooner than you'd think, despite the length of this track. Right now into Bergwerks, and he's going to get another very long run. Okay, here's the test. Does he begin to close in, and does he attack? We saw one driver make a pass through the moot curve before. Do we see another dare?
Looks a little too far back there at this point. Yeah, Joe, I don't think Justin's going to have it here. He's going to have to do it on the Dottinger Hoa.
And off screen, Walker actually popped out of the mini carousel, put two wheels into the grass. It wasn't super dramatic, but it certainly scared me a little bit. I'm sure it did him. There you see the Forge driver still leading the way by a handy 50 seconds. And he flies down the Dottinger Hoa, ready to celebrate, already flashing the lights because he knows this is victory within his reach.
A fantastic race from Walker, just completely clean the whole way through. No drama with the other classes. I mean, just an amazing drive for sure. Going to pass one of his Forge teammates in a BMW there. And is going to let Walker go by so he doesn't have to complete another full lap. But James Walker, what a drive from him today.
As he weaves his way through the last little chicane, that is it for him. On to the power, and James Walker is scot-free to take the win here for round 5 in the majors. It's the Nurburgring 2.4 that he can add to his shelf. Let's take a look at Josh Chin, still on the Dottinger Hoa. Again, even though it's not a win, he's 6 in the points, and he's going to manage to earn a few more than a couple of his rivals with this good finish.
Absolutely. He finished the race today, which is more than a lot of his rivals can say. So, I mean, that is the absolute barometer of success here at the Nordschleife. Did you finish? And Joshua Chin, with those last couple of corners, comes around, takes one more left, and one more right, and one more left. And he comes out of that final turn, and now he's home free. Josh Chin, second place here at the Nürburgring 2.4.
Andrew Waring, who started this one on the top in his class, did not look back. And in fact, he's going to be looking forward in the points because one of his rivals, Matthew Thunhorst, has wrecked out today. So the driver who sits third in the points will probably find himself one more spot up after this, and that much closer to potentially his first championship if he can continue to try and take the fight to Christian Challenger over the course of this season. It may have been the slowest class of the 3, but it's still a challenge to drive, the most unique of them, with the only four-wheel or front-wheel drive class, and almost looked like he was going to come into pit lane for a moment as he weaves in celebration. Andrew Waring is our winner in the TCR class.
DJ, we've got Hill and Morton, but they've got a wrinkle. Wayne Hutchison's right in front of them now.
Exactly. I've been keeping an eye on it, and that's going to help out Kevin Hill a little bit, but it looks like that Morton's got a little bit more of a toe right here. Very, very close. Gap is under 0.2 of a second right now, and here comes Justin Morton. Hutchinson is off to the right. That's going to help out Justin Morton ever so slightly. Here they go.
It's side by side, but he's hit the wall of air, and Morton starts to stall out. He's not completely clear. Now he is. Does he dare try and cut him off? He's looking for it, tries to chop him, but he can't. He has to leave space. This is all to decide fourth in the TCR class. As they come down, it's a game of chicken into the braking, into the last few set of S's. Oh no! And he's a little too hot into the wall. Morton gives it up, and Kevin Hill is the one that survives to take fourth. Oh, disappointment for the 9.
Justin Morton just taking it a little bit too hot into the braking zone. He's just now recovered, and he will get home in 5th position. But man, what a battle they had going.
Oh, I thought he had it. I thought that pass was all he needed to finish in that 4th spot, but His hubris under braking was his undoing.
Well, and you said it there, Joe. Very, very close to contact at absolute top speed. They go in there. Justin just starts to bring it into the right-hander as they go in through the sweepers. Carries too much speed. We talked about it. You've got to get these cars to brake in a perfectly straight line or it doesn't happen, and he is in the wall.
The longest wait for our winners is going to be Christian Challoner, who's actually just coming up to the mini carousel right now. But not only does he have a huge gap to the next class, he has multiple cars from the faster class between himself and Liam Quinn. Brian Bennett, Jason Wallet, both split himself and the 25 car.
Yeah, Christian Challoner, an amazing drive today. I mean, he's going to come home 5th in the overall standings on this track, finishing behind 4 of the faster class and ahead of 3 of the remaining running faster class, which is genuinely impressive. So Christian Challoner on that final straightaway with a very clean car, proving that this M4 GT4 can really put the power down. I mean, it can beat out some of the faster classes on this service as well if you got the right man behind the wheel. And Christian Challoner this week, absolutely the right man.
That's why you see the number 1 on that windshield, our current reigning champion, as he comes through Tiergarten and onto the pit straight. Christian Challoner adds another win to his tally here at the Nurburgring. And that is going to take us to a break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so make sure and stick around because there's more to come. Welcome back to the Nurburgring. We just watched round 5 in the majors. It's the Nurburgring 2.4, and up at the front, it was a trouncing from James Walker, who took a win by nearly 50 seconds over Josh Chin, who was ahead of Jeff Schmeier, who got himself a handy podium. That'll feel good for the Dog Bear drivers. With Daniel Johnson finishing 4th, we then get a little bit mixed up as we'll do these 10 at a time. Christian Challoner won for the GT4 class, finishing 5th overall. It was Brian Bennett who was 5th in class back there for his 911 Cup class. Jason Wallet was 6th in class. And then you get 2nd, finally, for the GT4s with Liam Quinn 8th overall. Justin Kirby was 7th in the 911 Cups, 9th overall. Andrew Wood 10th overall and takes a podium in the GT4s. Adam?
Austin Espedy comes home 4th in the GT4s ahead of Zachary Brown in 5th. Zach Brown having a couple of incidents, but able to recover to that 5th position. Nick Kuhn coming home in 6th. Then we have Andrew Waring, who takes the win in the TCR class, only his 2nd ever win in the majors, so that one's going to feel good, especially with the pace he was able to put on the field. Vincent Laherbier coming home in 2nd with Travis Worling in 3rd. Then Wayne Hutchison coming home back there in the 7th position for the GT4s with Kevin Hill in the 4th spot in TCR. Justin Morton coming home in 5th after that wreck that we saw, and then Brian Barnes in 8th position in the GT4s.
Following behind Brian was Adam Halleck, who was running a little bit higher up but had some problems going on. Same with Samuel Harris there, coming in 22nd overall. Brian McGreevy came home in 23rd, followed by Rob Powers, Ryan Steele, David Hall, and Marcus Tracy. And then we run into some of those GT4s that ran into some trouble: Lyndon Swaby, Bruce Perry, and Trent Brown.
Then from there on down, unfortunately, we get into the DNFs of the day, the drivers that did not manage to complete the race here at the Nürburgring, which in itself is usually an accomplishment, but it does take us to our winner in the fastest class, James Walker. And not only do I have to say congratulations and well done on an incredible victory there, James, but if I'm seeing correctly, this is your first ever win in the Major Series.
Yeah, it is. I definitely worked for it because I was expecting Josh and Eric to be really quick, but they fought each other for the first whole stint, and I managed to pull a pretty large gap. And then after that, it was, I don't know, Eric got in front of me because he didn't change any tires, and I was chasing him down, and then he went off, and then it was sort of just, don't crash.
Yeah, that's easier said than done when it comes to the Nürburgring. You said how them battling kind of helped you get a little bit of that gap. Do you attribute that mostly to that, or you think most of that 50-second gap you wound up with was just sheer raw pace?
I did think I had a bit of pace on them because I qualified them by 5 seconds. Yeah.
Well, whatever the case, it really stunned us. And what impressed me especially is that of our top 4 in the points in the Americas Pro, 3 of them took victories, you of which are 1, which this might actually promote you up to 3rd in the points today. That's got to feel pretty good considering how tight that is in the championship right now.
Yeah, it's definitely good. You know, this is my first season in majors, so doing so well definitely gives me a confidence boost. I don't like my chances though for next race.
Yeah, that is a very, very hotly contested one, I can tell you from experience. Even still, coming in as a rookie and fighting for a potential championship, that does not happen often in this series, so you should certainly feel proud. Is there anybody you'd like to thank that helped you make this victory possible?
I'd like to thank my team, Forge. Our other teammates from Bombshell, Isaac, he provided us with a really good setup. I think that's what sort of helped. Rethread, Majors Garage, and you guys for doing the broadcast.
That was our winner, James Walker, taking victory in the 911 Cup class. And next to him is Christian Challoner. I believe Adam has caught up with him after he took victory in the GT4s.
Absolutely, Christian. You took off on that first lap and never looked back. I mean, this circuit in and of itself is a challenge to finish, but to finish a full minute and a half ahead of your competitors in your class and in the top 5 overall. I mean, talk to me about your drive today.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, to be honest, I actually thought that Matt was going to be a little bit quicker in race pace than he was. So I was kind of just out there trying to make sure I was going to be out of the draft from him so that I could sort of run my own race. Didn't expect to have the pace advantage that I did over him, and kind of became clear pretty quickly on that it might actually be more fun to try and see if I could mix in with the 911s. And my buddy Daniel Johnson there finished just ahead of me, and it was interesting because right before the race he said, I'll be happy if I finish ahead of you. So like when he had those mistakes in the end, I was like, yeah, I can really make him work for this. So that was really what kept me going for the whole race. And yeah, told people BMW's fast, like out here trying to at least show it. So if you have the car, please go try it. It is definitely quick.
Well, absolutely. It finished in all the podium positions in GT4 are BMWs today. So I think you proved your point for sure, Christian. But so very clearly you had to find your way to focus throughout this race. But how exhausting is this circuit for these GT4 cars?
It's probably a little bit easier in the GT4 than it is, say, the 911 Cup car. The 911 Cup obviously doesn't have traction control or ABS, so that's if you can believe it, you got to be even more focused not to make mistakes and whatnot. But yeah, it's not easy. You don't have any downforce really to help you out as such. So there's a couple of places around the track which are really quite frightening. And you got to really kind of be on your toes the entire time throughout the race, otherwise you'll have a pretty big off. So it's important to kind of stay in a groove and not really fall asleep, so to speak. And that's kind of why I was out there trying to, it's going to sound strange, but trying to look for something to do, just to keep you focused, because if you don't, then that's when mistakes happen. When you get complacent, this place really bites. It doesn't take a lot to make a small error kind of be race ending. And I think we saw that with quite a few people. Obviously, guys were running around having a good run, and then one corner and they were out.
Absolutely, Christian. Well, yet another win under your belt and some great points for you and your team. Is there anyone you want to thank before we let you go today?
Yeah, I'd like to actually give a shout out to all the guys on my team. Obviously, we, Kinetic Racing, had a pretty good stranglehold on the GT4 class there. For the moment, we had all of us in the top 5, and then Lyndon was not able to complete the race, so that was pretty unfortunate. But we still got the top 4 in the class, so that was pretty cool. Obviously, drivers in another class as well. Vince, P2 and TCR in between Waring and Warling is really quite impressive. So great job by him. And same for Joshua Chin in second, and Dan for beating me in our inter-team rivalry to take the overall 4th spot.
Well, thanks for talking to us, Christian. Congrats on the win yet again.
Thank you.
That was Christian Challoner, who finished first place in the GT4s, and DJ has caught up to Andrew Waring, who finished first in the TCRs.
Andrew, your second victory here in the majors, and a pretty dominant one at that. You looked like you were never really pressured from behind. An absolutely incredible drive around what I would argue to say is the toughest circus on the service.
Yeah, it was for sure the tough circuit, but it is also a really good rhythm circuit. And I found once I was able to get into one, my car just seemed to really hook up, and I was able to just pound laps off really consistently. It was pretty good.
Well, I mean, we saw a lot of heavy battling behind you going on, but you obviously had to contend with a little bit of lap traffic as you go. How difficult is that with driving the slower class and having those guys come up on a track like this, especially through the Nordschleife itself, where it's just, impossible to pass almost?
The traffic was pretty good for me, actually. The 2 leaders in GT3 did a good job, or the Porsche GT3 did a good job. A couple of GT4 is a little difficult to deal with just because the cornering speed and braking speed actually is better on the TCR, but then they have the straight line speed. So all in all, I don't think it was too bad for me. I thought everybody did a good job.
Well, I've got to ask you then, and look on down the road. We're obviously headed to Indianapolis here in a couple of weeks. How do you think that's going to go? A little bit of a different track, a little bit of a different car.
Yeah, I'm targeting to do better in the ovals. So Indy's something that I didn't even make Div 1 last year. Thankfully, I have a provisional this year, so I don't got to worry about it. But Steve and the guys on the team are already hard at work trying to figure out that car and that track. So we should have something pretty good for that race. And I know I'm looking forward to it. So.
Well, fantastic, my friend. And anybody else you'd like to thank here for this really, really impressive win today?
Just you guys, GSRC doing a great job on the broadcast, I'm sure, as always, the major series for hosting these events. And then we got a couple sponsors, Tranco and Direct Innovations. Steve Driscoll wasn't able to race this weekend, but he put a hell of a car together. And Kevin and all the teammates there, we did a lot of preparation for this race. So it just shows, we're doing really well as a new team, and hopefully it just keeps up.
Well, we'll be watching for you going forward, Aaron Drew. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
That was your winner in the TCR class, and now Joe Peak has caught up with Joshua Chin.
Yes, and this was an impressive drive, going from 4th up to 2nd to take a podium here today for Kinetic. It looked like you also had to basically survive like a lot of the drivers did. A few of those ahead of you seemed to have made mistakes. So was your focus just trying to keep it on the track, or were you pushing 100%?
Well, there's 3 kinds of people who can drive Nords. They can go fast, they can survive, or they can do both. I am not fortunate enough to be able to do both, so I was just trying to survive. I felt like death earlier today. I had a 102 fever, so I'm a little shocked I was able to race at all. I was going in with a goal of 3rd place, and 2nd place is even better than I'd hoped for, and it was a pretty good night for us in team points, so everything went better than I expected.
That makes it even more impressive, frankly, to be racing while so sick. It did do well. It's a good thing that you decided to race, because you came in here 6th in the points with problems for Thunhorst and with Driscoll unable to attend today. You might find yourself shooting up the order quite a bit.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to be locked in this early, and this just kind of solidifies it for the rest of the season. Especially with everything else coming up on the schedule. I think it works out pretty well for us, having Indy coming up, Lamar, Crandon. Crandon's going to be a lot of fun. So being locked in for some of those definitely helps quite a bit. There's some things that I haven't run before, so it's going to be a learning process, definitely.
That said, we've watched you run open wheelers over in the Precision Racing League for some time now. So do you feel pretty confident heading off to Indy?
Yeah. Indy, it's not been kind to me the last 2-3 years since that 2018 win, but I still love the place, and hopefully you can get some of the magic back. It's going to be a lot of racing Indy at that time, so I'll definitely not be short of practice. I was tonight for sure, but we won't have that problem at Indy.
All right. Well, congratulations on a podium, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you for a second time in the month of May.
Yes.
That was Josh Chin. And I believe that rounds out our interviews for this evening. Before we go, we once again want to mention our charity that we were raising funds for this race, and that is the CCLA, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. They can be found at ccla.org. We have a link in the description below if you just want to go and click that. We want to give a big thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcasts, which are listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. And thanks to the team today, Adam, DJ, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com, or simply check out our social media. We've got it listed at the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to support the channel, check out our merchandise store at simracingmerch.com/GSRC. We've also got a link to that in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Next race, perhaps the most special to me personally, the Indy 500, Sunday, May 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.